Ladies and gentlemen, what's going on? Today's episode is brought to you by you-know-who, Black Rifle Coffee. If you want to bring your coffee game to the next level, if you want to stop fucking around and drinking trash coffee, go to blackriflecoffee.com and surf through the variety of offerings that they have. My suggestion is joining the coffee club because you get it delivered to your house. You don't have to do anything. And then if you want to take it to the next level, Evan has the ECS, which is basically Evan's select blends of coffee. Both of them are fantastic, but they got everything there from, Yeti tumblers to stuff to make coffee to apparel, anything you could possibly want. Go to blackriflecoffee.com and start your day the right way. And that's it. My guest today is Tony Cowden, and he is a veteran running for Congress in North Carolina. He's already spent over 20 years of his life fighting for this country, whether that is as a Green Beret in the Army, did some private contracting, worked for some alphabet soup organizations overseas, and probably everything in between. Now he is directing his focus towards representing those in his district in North Carolina, and he does a much better job than me explaining who he is and why he wants to do what he wants to do now. So enjoy episode 218 with Tony Cowden.
Okay, got the red smoke. Gun run, north and south, west of the smoke, west of the smoke. Okay, copy, west of the smoke. I'm looking at danger close now. Come on with it, baby, give it to me, I need it. You're cleared hot. Copy, cleared hot.
Thing is, so there's a bunch of, there's like 6 SEALs running, 4 SF dudes, all running for Congress.
Yeah.
And we got a little group, we talk, and they all hit me up. They're like, bro, who's doing your social media?
I bet you most of them actually probably have a company or organization that's I get
so
it.
Sad,
But it's enticing.
It is,
because what do we as military members in general? Actually, I'm gonna have to preface that by saying our generation. What the fuck do we know about social media coming out of the military? Nothing.
Right.
Now, my 18-year-old son knows more than both of us combined and everybody that we know, which is why I had to say our generation.
Right.
Because the newer generation guys are going to know how to do it.
Well, he grew up in it while also developing genetic expression,
Yeah. But it doesn't surprise me that those guys would get linked up with somebody like, hey, I'll make the videos for you. Mm-hmm. To me, there's a fine line between, on any type of video, between that is impossible to watch because they're like dropping the phone or it's flipped the wrong way, or so incredibly polished that I feel like they're trying to sell me something.
Right. And that is kind of a flip, and I'll tell you, we did some pro videos for the website and stuff.
Yep, pull that thing closer to your face. Go like
Are we recording?
Almost touching.
Are we live?
Yeah, we're always
rolling?
recording.
Hell yeah.
Well, we're not live.
Oh, okay.
Well,
Not live,
it'll come out in a couple weeks.
Right.
We're live-ish. That's the secret to podcasting.
Yeah.
You should just go.
We just got to talk.
I have had some amazing conversations with guests for like 20 minutes, and like, fuck, we're not recording.
Yeah. No, and that's why when you said, hey, come up here, I was like, all right, screw it. Yeah. I'd much rather do these face to face.
It's so much better.
And folks in general are getting better. I just did one Sunday morning with some guys down at Carson in Colorado. And it was a really good conversation because the technology supports it, but it's still not the same.
I have only been able to truly get away with it if I know the person on the screen very well, and I've had a bunch of interactions with them. I find it really hard if you're just getting to know the person or if you just met them for the first time. It's tough. It's so much easier to be able to sit here and look at you and figure out what it is that we want to talk about and how we want to talk about it.
With all this stuff, man, this whole political thing, like, it's really not hard for me because I'm just being me. And now I have been told a couple of times I need to scrub some of the cuss words now that I'm going to be a public figure or whatever, or some mess. But
do you need
what?
to though, or is it more? I mean, I guess it's a matter of timing.
Yeah, and audience
for sure. Like if you go to a grade school and are talking to the kids,
right.
I wouldn't do like the classic team room. Hey, fuckers, bring it in.
Come here. No. But you don't
want to lose your essence of who you are.
No.
People will say the same thing to me. Well, you cuss a lot on the podcast. And one, I'm not trying to, but what I am trying to do is be my authentic self.
Yeah.
And sometimes the limits of my vocabulary are reached and I fill them in with 4-letter words.
Right. And you know what? At this point, I think Americans in general, we've moved past this whole idea that we have to fluff everything up, you know? And I mean, when did it start? With Bill Clinton. Americans are now forgiving of pretty bad behaviors. So a few cuss words here and there, I think they're just forgiving of it. And I don't cuss that bad anyway. You know, it was funny. I was in Uzbekistan, and the concierge receptionist, whatever she was, she said to me and one of my teammates, you know, we're at the Sheraton, that's Russian for Sheraton.
Yep.
And she said, "You guys cuss too much." And that was a Russian telling us that we had a foul mouth. And it kind of sunk in that, you know what, we are those ugly Americans. And
Yeah, but they cuss like a mother.
Really bad. Oh, yeah.
We just don't know it.
Right. It was just so funny that, you know, from their perspective, you know, she was telling us that we had bad mouths. And so I started even trying to clean it up way back then. And of course, you know the deal. If you're briefing the AMBO or a chief of station or a chief of base, you watch your mouth, right? Yeah. But around the boys and talking, I'm going to, especially when I start getting a little passionate about whatever we're talking about, which has never been me. Like, only the whole political thing. I've been apolitical for a long time, you know. I mean, I joined under, you know, Bill Clinton.
Same.
Yeah. You know, we've been under how many presidents now? So
let's see. It started with,
I kind of lost track.
Yeah, and it's interesting because how much did your job really change under any of those administrations? Mine didn't change.
None.
Maybe a little bit of budget fluff here and there,
right.
But I can always be creative and find another line item to put a purchase under.
You know, a lot of guys want to say, well, the rules of engagement and stuff. My
Never
rules
changed.
of engagement were always the same.
Yeah.
You can only shoot someone that's threatening you or that's been targeted. Hey, man, not a big deal.
You always have the inherent right to self-defense,
That's right.
which, for people listening, as an ROE, that's actually very broad.
Very broad and very vague.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of guys who have gotten in trouble over it over the years were just really horrible at articulating what happened and or videotaped it.
And or videotaped it, or I will say, and I saw this, and you may have had this experience too in your military career, I worked with the best leaders I've ever been around in my life in the SEAL community, and the worst. The absolute worst. And the leaders who truly, and I would often is not a good word, I would occasionally hear them talking about how, well, this ROE is limiting us. And all the country, the theater ROEs between Iraq and Afghanistan were 99.9% the same. I always looked at ROEs as incredibly empowering. Where's my left and right limit? What do I need to be able to articulate? And then I'm good to go.
That's right.
I can do whatever the hell I want to do and maneuver through that. And then the shitty leaders who cannot articulate that to their people, I saw this on one deployment. The people working for that person were very afraid to take action because they thought their boss was going to throw them under the bus.
Yeah.
To the point of coming to get me, I might have been napping in the middle of the day because it's hot there. And like tapping me on the shoulder, hey, can you come over here? We got a question. And the question was, what do we do about this dude tactically maneuvering with an AK through a largely open zone? It's like, shoot that motherfucker. Why didn't they want to, though? Because they were scared of the leadership that was above them.
Of course.
And so it's a combination of those things. It's maybe they don't understand it, but that poor leadership can have that cascading effect, and it reduced the combat effectiveness of that element until that person was eventually removed.
Yeah, and going the other way, those same crappy leaders can't articulate and build a decent con-op that goes up higher, getting things approved. So they send one thing up, it gets disapproved because it was some wazoo mess they should have never put on paper anyway. So, you know, CJSO commander looks at it and says, no, you can't do that. And what he's basically saying is, I'm going to send it back to you.
Yeah.
Send it back up with some improvements, and you guys can go. I mean, I just never really felt restricted at all. And
I actually felt very empowered, and I feel bad for the people who will say the ROEs limited us, because it's like, oh man, you had probably a very shitty leader.
Right.
Because if you can sit down and talk to your guys and say, hey, this is a hard stop and this is a hard stop, but all this space in between those two things, get after it. Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I never had an issue with it.
Yeah, you know, I found that the teams that sat on their butts and did nothing and complained, or just got jacked and tanned instead of out there getting some, they were the teams with the crappy leaders that couldn't ride a con-op.
Yeah.
And I mean, there was different periods under different commanders, especially Afghanistan.
Later on, it became very difficult.
Right. You know, you had to, because, you know, NATO and everybody else. Now, by that time, I was over with the agency and in Iraq. And
different story.
yeah, I mean, I only had one person I had to tell what I was going to go do. And it was always like, okay, be careful.
Yeah. Yeah, that's certainly a different rule set than, say, Afghanistan 2010, where you better be sure you had all the correct buzzwords in your con-op appropriately, risk assessment, which should be done at all times. But it's you had to,
it's a risky business.
You had to have T's crossed, I's dotted, or it was going to get kicked back.
Right. If you put a comma where a semicolon was supposed to go, you're done. And I think
I had a brief sent back. You'll laugh at this. Because on the insert slide, I had the helicopters facing the wrong direction on the slide. They would have been flying tail rotor first. You know, it was like they were oriented with the head of the aircraft to the left, and on the map we were moving to the right. They kicked it back.
That's the stuff that was horrible. Not the ROE. It was the leaders and the little pencil pushing turds.
So I had to Google on shit internet overseas, how do you reverse a fucking helicopter image on a PowerPoint slide? Because I'm not incredibly technically savvy, but then I figured it out, and then the exact same mission template with the helicopter facing in the appropriate direction was approved. Zero changes other than
it kind of makes you wonder, like, if you could respawn, to use gamer verbiage, and better speak to the next generation, General Patton, you know, MacArthur's, those dudes who were out there on the battlefield.
Yeah.
Can you
that's
imagine
a huge difference in and of
putting
itself.
those dudes like in a talk in Bagram, like just poof, there they are.
Could you imagine telling those dudes that they're actually not going to set foot on the battlefield? That they are, as the most senior officer there, they're going to manage it remotely?
Yeah. At the beginning of Afghanistan, we couldn't get people on the phone because they were all in Tampa, Florida, and they were asleep.
Oh, down in
And
SoCal?
like the one person that was watching the phone really couldn't answer for General Franks.
Yeah.
What? Yeah.
Interesting for sure. You think it's a good thing or a bad thing that a bunch of SF dudes are looking at politics now?
Well, you know, anything has the potential to be good and anything has the potential to be bad.
I don't think heroin falls into that category.
Okay. Almost anything. Yeah, right? No, probably not.
Yeah. Pedophilia.
Yeah. Good point. You know, the guys that are doing it, then they're good. They're squared away. You know, Jay Collins he's running in Florida. Tyler Alcon, he just announced in Colorado. So not only are these guys stepping up, they're stepping up in places and in districts they need to be. I don't know Mojo Luttrell. He's running down
I know
in
his
Texas.
brother. Yeah, not him. Yep.
You know Marcus? Okay. I don't know
Peripherally.
him.
Yeah, not incredibly
Right.
well.
And then there's Zeke. Is that how you say his name? Zinke. Is that how you say his name?
If we're talking the same guy, he's
in Montana.
Yeah, the Department of the Interior. Or
Right.
something. Yeah.
Yeah. And he was, you know, he's an O.
Yep.
A lot of the guys are running are enlisted dudes.
Yep.
And I think we need some of that blue collar.
You need to mix it
how
both.
to work. Yeah. You know, I mean, there's a reason why when you have a good team, they have a mix of both.
Yeah.
So, you know, I think right now those guys stand to create a caucus. And it's not just soft, right? There's over 30 veterans running, and the bulk of them are enlisted. And I think that's just cool. It signals a little bit of a change. They're all blue collar, enlisted, not the elite, running as Republicans, right? The whole Republican Party is shifting and changing so much. So they have a huge potential to go and do good. So, you know, if let's say there's 30 vets running. Well, across the board, the ones that I've talked to, which is we have a group on Thursday nights. We do a little group Zoom call, and it was organized by Lieutenant Colonel Scheller, Stuart Scheller, the Marine that spoke out about the Afghanistan.
Familiar now? Yeah. Okay.
Remember him?
Yep.
So Stu, he lives less than an hour from me. I've gotten to know him really well, and he did it all for the right reasons. Right?
Yeah.
He was fed up,
and he knew the consequences too. He did.
He did.
I am a fan of people doing whatever they want to in life as long as it's an informed decision.
Mm-hmm.
You know, freedom of choice and freedom from consequences are two very different things. But people want to detach them. Like, no, I will do whatever I want. It's like, yeah, go ahead, but you're, you know. So in his situation, he seemed like he knew what he was getting into.
He absolutely did.
Yeah.
And I think he got off lighter than he expected, which says a lot to me. You know, he expected to spend a little more time in the brig. He expected to potentially get, you know, something not honorable discharge, but ultimately they gave it to him and booted him out. And he also thought they were going to drag it out for a long time because there was folks pushing him to run for Congress as well. And I mean, he finally got out mid-December. He still, heck, he could still file and run, but he just had so much piled up on him in so very little time that he's decided to put that on pause. And I can't speak for him, but I have a feeling he might run in 2024.
It would be probably a better optic for him if he chose to. He would need a little bit of time, I think, to let everything settle.
Yeah, you know, Eddie Gallagher ran the fundraising for his legal team, and they raised almost $2 million to help him out. So he's got that really serious backing. But what I was talking about was he organized this group. So on Thursday nights, all these veterans would get on the horn and talk through Zoom. And, you know, these are folks who've done multiple deployments in a war that just drug on way longer than we all knew it should, right? In a war that Congress never declared, that Congress shrugged its constitutional authorities because that's their job. That is clearly defined in the Constitution, that only Congress can keep us in a war like that.
Yeah.
But they didn't. They just sat back and let one president after another. And, you know, I'm torn because, right, I volunteered every chance I get. I would purposely go back overseas. I'd cut my leave short. I didn't want to miss a single operation. I didn't have kids. I didn't have a wife.
It was your life.
Me. But now looking back, well, I'm not really upset. Like personally, on my level, I'm not mad at anybody about the war, but I can look and be like, wow, there were a lot of lives destroyed, lives lost over what? But regardless of your personal feelings of the war, whether it was just, whether it was righteous, you know, clearly, right, what we were doing in Afghanistan at the beginning was righteous and just.
Yeah.
After that, it's definitely debatable. But the facts are Congress shrugged their constitutional authorities, their duties, right? Like legally, they are tasked with that thing. The executive branch cannot do it. So they sat back this entire 20 years. How many different representatives and senators just let the presidents do whatever they wanted? And, you know, let's be factual. There was a lot of companies that got very rich off the war. And that's
since the inception of war, that's been the case.
That's right.
Yeah.
And so, you know, I tell guys all the time when they get wrapped up in this woe is me, you know, bro vet, PTSD, I'm like, hey guys, look, war has always been about conquest. We actually just suck at it, right? Like if we actually were an imperial power, that, you know, we'd be pumping oil out of Iraq and we'd all be paying $1 a gallon.
Here's my thoughts. I think we're great at war.
Well, we're awesome at war.
We don't have a fucking clue what to do afterwards.
Not a clue.
And we get very lost. Like,
right.
I would describe, what year did you join the military?
97.
So I joined in 96. Pre 9/11, you got to feel it. I would describe us as a blunt object because we had some decades, at least in the Navy, the community I came from, there was Vietnam, where only the first SEAL teams got to go over there.
Right.
I know for a fact one, I think two might have gone over there. The Gulf War, which I believe lasted 37 seconds. Panama, which there was some SEALs actually drowned jumping into Panama, or was it Grenada? One of the two.
I think it's Grenada, and Panama was the airfield thing.
That's right.
Yep.
So Grenada.
The private airfield thing.
Yep.
Yeah.
Panama, and then Mogadishu, where there was 4 total team guys who were there augmenting the Army component.
Yeah.
Other than that, there was a large gap.
Yeah.
So it was blunt, but man, by the time I got out, I did 17 years, got out in 2013. It was a scalpel. You put guys, if you could find and fix an enemy, they were proper fucked.
Oh, yeah.
We were going to get them.
Yeah.
But then look at what happened in Afghanistan.
Actions on the objective were
amazing.
good.
That's what I'm saying. Like
right.
we were
but so
incredibly good.
Yeah.
And the guys, everybody that I worked with did exactly the same thing. They would cut leave short. They would be rushing to get into places and positions that had the absolute most risk and danger, so other people would. The
quintessential dude. We're all trying to be the number one, man.
Totally.
Every time.
And you look at it, we won every tactical engagement that I was involved with throughout my career, and it's the success for the country, I think, is I'd be curious how the history books in 20 years will define Iraq and Afghanistan.
Well, I mean, just like in Vietnam, and it's funny because, the Pentagon Papers, they highlighted that there was an industrial machine that wanted to keep us there because of money. And it was lots of people all the way to the president was making money, and they tried to cover it up and all that. And, I'm no conspiracy theorist. I think I heard somebody say the other day, there's a difference between being a conspiracy theorist and a truth seeker.
You heard that on Joe Rogan because he was talking with Oliver Stone.
Is that why I heard it? You know what?
Because I literally was listening to that this morning.
Because my girlfriend has recently been listening to Joe Rogan. She listens to podcasts all the time. And I'm actually really very happy she's listening to Joe Rogan because typically she's always listening to like murder stuff, like different murder stories. Dude, and I'm a little concerned with that.
The number one, so all those like murder mystery shows, the main demographic for those, like the 90th percentile is women.
Yeah.
I don't know why they're watching that shit.
It's kind of scary, because she always jokes, and maybe it's not a joke, that my girlfriend's a stud, man. Like, she's a self-made American success story, and business person, dentist, owns her own practice. Hell, she went to the games, man. She's a stud, still is.
CrossFit Games for people listening.
That's right. And that's right. Some commonality between us here, right? With the games. Strongman, ultra marathoner, iron triathlete, name it. She's done it. Bodybuilding,
hard as nails.
Yeah, but she, out of character, she makes me coffee in the morning, and I think she probably doesn't even like me telling people that because it doesn't fit her, tough guy image or whatever. She's actually a sweetheart if you get to know her, but her joke is that she makes me coffee every day and adds just a little poison, so she's slowly killing me while also enjoying her time with me.
I mean, have you seen the movie The Princess Bride?
Maybe. I don't think so. She might watch it.
He puts out these cups. He's like having this debate with an individual who's like the smartest dude ever, and he puts poison. He tells him, I'm going to put poison in one of these glasses. But what does he do? He puts them in both because every day he poisons himself a little bit. So he developed a tolerance to that particular type of poison. So maybe she's just making you stronger.
Yeah, I don't
Put
know.
that in your pipe and smoke it.
Yeah. There's potential. She's, admittedly, she's much more intelligent than I am. So it's a scary thing I live with sometimes.
I've embraced it. I realize that in pretty much every room I go into, I am the dumbest person. And that realization has made it easy for me because it's like, I'll just go sit down over here and
just listen.
Shut up and listen. Yeah. It's interesting. You talk about, the bro vets and the PTSD and woe is me. And, I don't have any problem with anything that I was asked to do in the military. I believed in the mission more so. Looking back now, I believe in the mission less when it comes to Iraq. I think the reasoning for going in there is very fairly examined, and there's a very hard questions that I think are still yet to be answered when it comes to that. Afghanistan, I totally agree with you. I mean, it was, hey, we're going to go find the people who perpetrated 9/11. My only issue that I have with my military service is that I'm really concerned that my own kids and the kids of people that I served with are going to have dust on their boots in either Iraq or Afghanistan in the future. Right. We fucked it up in the long run.
Right. Well, in January of 2002, I was going to the market in Jalalabad. We were living in a house in town. The people loved us.
Probably thin-skinned vehicles, Hiluxes.
Absolutely. I mean,
Were
I
those
would go
the
to the
days?
market without a gun, just in my, Afghani clothes, and hugs and kisses were the biggest threat.
Yeah.
And
fast forward to 2010. and
only
you
a few
would
years
vaporize.
later, what we do? The politician colonels and generals wanted their conventional military and the strikers and the tanks. And let's face it, they lost the war just because a bunch of political careerist officers in the conventional side needed their silver stars and bronze stars and all the other stuff that SOF was over here getting. And, again, not a conspiracy theorist. That's just how it was.
Yeah.
They were lobbying Donald Rumsfeld, who was a conventional military guy, not hard to convince that tanks were needed. And all it takes is a quick history lesson. Every single nation who's ever tried to occupy, and that's what we tried to do, the second we put on uniforms and started raising U.S. flags in Afghanistan, they started fighting us.
Yeah, they're not having any of that.
Same thing happened with the Brits. Same thing happened with the Russians only a few years prior. But we don't care because there's so much money to be made. So there needs to be some answers. There needs to be, some serious looks at it because, like I said, hey, we can probably give President Bush a little bit of a pass because it was all what happened right at the beginning.
I'll give him a pass for Afghanistan.
The first term.
I don't even know if I'd give him a pass for the whole first term. I'll give him a pass for Afghanistan.
Yeah.
It actually comes up in the book. They were looking at Iraq super early, like even around the time of Moses Sharif and I forget the name, Chiang Mai or something like that. Like we're talking within 60 days of them in Afghanistan. They're talking about ways to try to get into Iraq.
I remember being up at the FOB in K2, General Mulholland, 5th Group Commander, Colonel at the time. They were already trying to do everything they could. It was like, where's 3rd Group? Where is 3rd Group? They're trying to get 3rd Group to come in and rip them out so they could go to Iraq.
Yeah.
And that had to have been February 2002 that I was up there. Yeah. We just went up there to, for op fun and comp.
We used to go up there to jump too.
Yeah. And it was like, yeah, I don't know. I mean, there just needs to be some type of...
I think it's all fair game to throw on the table, and it should be examined. And I just...
Right. But you and I, we go do an op, something doesn't go very well. What do? We AAR it. We after action review that stuff.
Yeah.
And for me, after action reviews have always been the gloves come off, right?
Well,
you can say whatever you want in there. If guys need to fist fight about what happened on target, cool. It doesn't happen on target. It only happens in the AAR.
Correct.
So we come from a world and a community where analyzing our own actions is a part of the culture. It's not even
part of the
question.
evolution too.
Right.
That's why we went from being a blunt object, in my opinion at least, to being a scalpel.
Right.
We took the pre 9/11 tactics, tried that shit out for real, and people went,
Whoa.
"Hey, we're all gonna die if we keep doing this."
Yeah.
Also, I weigh 130 pounds over my body weight because of all this shit I'm carrying. Let's start throwing everything on the table and going, "This is gone.
Right.
This is gone.
Well,
this is gone."
We had been training for decades to fight the Russians, and all of a sudden we're fighting peasants. And I used to always tell guys, I come from a little bit of a redneck, pretty close to some white trash background, and I come from a rural place where we did redneck stuff since the time I was a little baby. And I would try to imagine, okay, well, how would we fight an occupying force? Okay.
Exactly the way they
it's
did.
It's the exact same thing they did.
Yeah.
So when I would look at them, I think another conversation at one point I had with my team was like, I was adamant, you will not disrespect them, right? You wouldn't call them all the words we like to call them.
Yep.
Right? Because the second you disrespect them, that next op's the one they hand it to us, because they have good days too. And, it would be like me getting in the ring with Mike Tyson. You know what I mean? They were willingly, daily fighting Mike Tyson. I mean, there's no way they could ever go toe-to-toe with us. They knew it, and they were still willing to fight us. Whether you believe in what they were fighting for or not, they deserve a little bit of our respect.
Yeah.
And I don't think the conventional generals and colonels and Pentagon people and even the presidents, plural, gave them that respect.
They never saw it.
Right.
They never had either their own life or a teammate's life saved because
No, of course not.
Because as you were driving by, you had the local go
Right.
and redirect you down a road that didn't have an IED on that.
Right.
If you never, and that's what I agree with you on. It's so easy to, and I've been guilty of it in the past as well. Like, oh, we're fighting fucking idiots. We're fighting people from centuries
We all
before,
are.
which, in essence of that, from a technological perspective, yes, they're in the 1400s, if I'm being generous. But you know what? High ground still works.
That's right.
And AKs can be buried for a fucking 100 years, and they're still going to have a very nice cyclic rate of fire.
Right.
And I can't tell the difference between somebody who just crossed the border, hypothetically, not that anybody would ever come from Pakistan to fight us.
Of course not. Or Iran.
Yeah. I can't tell the difference, though. To my eyes, I'm sorry. They dress so incredibly similar.
Mm-hmm.
They can see us. It's funny, the argument for the relaxed grooming standards. You're going to fit in with the locals. First off, when they first told me I didn't have to shave or cut my hair anymore, I'm like, You're right. I'm going to fit in with the locals.
Yeah.
I look like fucking Abe Lincoln.
No. Yeah.
I could invade an Amish culture and churn butter and make fucking furniture.
Right.
So
we made that up. Let's
Correct.
face it, right? We made up the relaxed group of
and it was
standards.
awesome.
We made it up.
And they're
Yeah.
like, oh, it'll buy you time. And then you go over there like, it's not buying me shit. It might buy you a blink of an eye. But what I really need, and this happened more than once, was a heads up from the people who knew what was going on. Right. I didn't sense it. I couldn't feel it. I couldn't see it. And literally, I remember distinctly people, a farmer out there like pointing in a direction, like shaking his head on the road we're on or the road we're traveling and pointing in that direction. Yeah. And you lose their respect because you're an asshole, or you throw trash at them, or you shoot their dog. All of those things I have seen personally. And the next time you don't get that, and you get
striker runs over the granddaughter on a bicycle, right? Like that. I will always go back to, I saw what Soft did at the beginning. I saw what we did, and we won the hearts and minds. We did what we were supposed to do without that extra casualty, without the collateral. And as soon as the big army showed up, they turned on us. We created that enemy, with the big army. And,
I'm not going to give Soft a total pass.
Right.
There was some. But here's the thing. Every community is exactly that. It's an amalgamation of a bunch of people. Right. Good eggs and bad. I think the selection process on the SEAL side is very good. I'm sure you would say the same thing on the Army SF side, but it's not perfect.
No, of course not.
And we had our incidents.
Yeah. Everyone did.
And it's
called war. There's going to be a percentage of incidents.
Correct. And it just, I think it's hard for people to say that they should have some level of respect, whereas that's the position that I've always come from. I actually pretty deeply respect somebody, whether their belief that they're willing to fight for is that my life should end. If you want to get in the arena and go toe-to-toe on that, I will show you respect for the desire to do so.
Absolutely.
I'm going to blow your fucking head off.
Right.
But I will respect you for at least being willing to do that.
Absolutely. And like I said, they knew every time they tried to go at us, they were hopping in a ring with something they could never beat.
Yeah.
So there's some respect there. I'll still contend that had we left it up to Soft, we'd have been out of Afghanistan by 2004.
Yeah.
With a small contingent there. They most likely would have contained some form of sovereign government. Afghanistan has survived since the 1400s, through its tribalism. And it's the fact that they are isolated from each other. However, in the 1950s and 60s, it was a tourist resort for American hippies. And it was very Western. It was beautiful. My stepmother told me stories about it. And, all of her California hippie friends went there to smoke up and get high, and apparently
they do grow some weed there.
Was amazing in the 60s. While we were over fighting in Vietnam, the hippies were hanging and having a good time in Afghanistan. And then, of course, Russia invaded, and out of that arose the Taliban. And,
it's easy to sit there and sit back and say Monday morning quarterback. Right. But I do think about that. So say we had left in 2004 and we would have had a much smaller footprint. I look at the enemy that I think are the communities that we came from are still fighting right now. Right. We were so good at find, fix, and finish when they would get together that I almost think we were so effective that it created the problem that we're fighting today. Not that we created ISIS, but the disaggregate nature in which they realize if they get together, we might hear some helicopters, we might have somebody knock on our door with like a C6 charge. Right. And maybe we shouldn't do that. So now it's like, I think
stimuli, adaptation. Yeah. Stimuli, adaptation. If you run every day, you'll get better at running. Well, and then sooner or later get hurt, but whatever. Yeah. As the enemy got more exposure to us and we got better, so did they.
They do AARs too, and I think that's forgotten sometimes.
They were videotaping us and all that. The enemy in Iraq and then the enemy in Syria was not our Afghanistan enemy in 0102 by any means.
Well, and then the IED threat from Iraq made its way over to Afghanistan. There was a lot of cross-pollination.
Oh, absolutely.
I don't know. Maybe people don't realize there's only one country separating the two.
And it's not a country that likes us. It was almost as if Iran was the one constant in those two wars. And, I think we've been soft on Iran for way too long. When I say that, I don't think we should go to war with them. That's way above my pay grade of who I think we should go to war with. But especially the Obama administration, man, they allowed for so much of what happened in Afghanistan and Iraq by just simply allowing Iran to do so much.
Yeah, I don't follow Iran too closely, unfortunately. Maybe it's a blind spot for me, but I don't know a whole lot about it.
I worked northern Iraq and lived and worked with the Kurds.
So you're going to feel a heavy influence.
Huge. I was on that border a lot.
Yeah.
And, it was kind of funny because like in Saladin and Erbil and stuff, it was like, you'd see their intel guys and no fighting, right? No fighting.
The gentleman's work.
But, I could always go and sit down in the same restaurant with them and just make things feel a little uncomfortable, as they meet with somebody I know or whatever, It was a lot of games up there that we played with them.
Yeah.
But, and we even, of course, talked to some Iranians here and there and, got a feel for what they were doing and understood it. And I always felt like it was just being ignored. I don't know if it was being ignored, but there was no actions taken on cables and sit reps sent about what we knew was happening.
Yeah.
So
before we get into your desire to go into politics, let's go. Well, we should go back in time. It'll make more sense if we go sequentially. What was the desire to join? I'm assuming it was the Army to begin with.
Yeah. Our generation, we blame our parents, right? It's everything that went wrong in our lives had to be up to our dad's failing, right? Wasn't that kind of our thing a little bit?
No, I'm pretty sure my parents were like, "Hey, it's on you."
Well, the American thing, right? It's like, the secret to success is knowing who to blame for your failures.
That's a shitty fortune cookie. Like, if anybody thinks
I think I saw it.
They may not be picking up on your sarcasm.
Right. No, I think I saw that on like one of those demotivational posters, and it just stuck with me because it is, Americans love to blame. We don't want to be accountable. So I like to joke and say that, my dad let me watch Rambo First Blood when I was like 9. And it is a true story. So it did plant that seed in my head that those, those Green Berets, they're real badasses, to quote the guys in the movie.
Solid movie.
Great movie. And
the first one.
Right. The other ones are questionable. The last one was really violent.
Yeah.
So was cool.
But he's also really old.
God. Old man strength, right?
God. Is that what it is? Is that what comes in those bottles?
Right?
Yeah.
Right. But no, I was trying college. I joked that it's not really a joke. I was enrolled at NC State, but I wasn't really attending college. I was a bad kid. I was a major screw up. I got pulled over, and luckily I didn't blow enough to get a DUI. But when I was 16 years old, pulled over and arrested for drinking and driving.
Yeah.
16. Doing redneck stuff. Because hell, I was drinking and driving on the hunting club roads when I was 14.
Yep.
And smoking weed. Played around with a little cocaine. Got in trouble. And, I was just more focused on chasing girls and college party. And so it was clear after a couple semesters or 2 years, it took 2 years of college for me to go, hey, you're paying for these classes you're not going to, you're just partying. And like on a Tuesday morning, I went down and signed up for the Army. And I'm glad I did because my trajectory was, shallow. I was cruising for a bruising, as my grandmother would say.
Did you know what you wanted to do in the Army?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, I wanted that funny green hat, man.
It is a funny green hat.
It is. It's worthless. It's hot as hell. Doesn't keep the sun out of your eyes.
You said it first, not me, so I can comment on it.
It's goofy as hell. It's goofy as hell. The beret is the dumbest thing ever.
Not if you're a painter. How dare you?
We might as well be painters. But yeah, there was something about that whole Special Forces unconventional mission. I have always enjoyed everybody likes kicking doors, right? And back then there was like two types of SF guys: the door kicker, boot wearing guys, and then the ASO source operation guys, and we used to call them soft shoe profile guys. Well, I was always really proud about being able to do both, and I tried to work both early on. The coolest thing I ever got to do was right off the bat, my warrant, who was all in the ASO stuff, put me and a couple other guys on a project. And so it was like, ooh, I didn't look like an SF guy. I was a skinny college kid, and I was young. I was still a baby to be there. And, most SF guys back then, SF, stood for slow and fat. I didn't look like that. I was very much a little runner dude. And so I got to go play, long-haired teams before we had the 4th Battalions and all that stuff. So the long-haired project team. So I got to do some really cool stuff, some red cell stuff against the nation, and learned a lot. We were actually doing it on 9/11, which kind of made it
Really
spooky.
Yeah.
Because the asset that I was watching and tracking, I mean, this is an asset that could control our planet. He was in the chain of command for running our country in time of nuclear war. And I watched him, his detail, and his security of like a platoon or so of Marines. I had no idea 9/11 had happened. I didn't know what was happening. All I know is I had to watch this guy. And I had chased him all over the Midwest for almost 6 months.
Really?
Crazy program.
That's a long-ass project.
Very long. And anyway, I got the text that, hey, abort, shut it down, blah, blah, meet here. I'd been working with a cell for that long and had never met any of them. All old school dead drops, old tradecraft stuff. Well,
Goddamn
old school
007 shit.
Flip phones and burners and all that, written notes dropped and good stuff. So great start to my career. Like I couldn't ask for anything else. And then right after that, went to all the door kicking schools and all that cool stuff. And then poof, Afghanistan happened, right? It was all piled right up on top of me. So, I mean, as far as my career goes, man, it was just nothing but like being at the right place at the right time. But yeah, I mean, it really was. I wasn't fitting in college. I was a little dirtbag that was just in trouble, and now that I'm running and stuff, people have asked me like, well, what are you going to do when people find out that you were arrested for cocaine? I'm like, I'm going to talk about it.
Yeah.
Your
best protection is honesty.
Well, I mean, I have no reason to, what do you think the first SF-86 I had to fill out? I had to be honest with it. You can't expunge a felony, bro. It's always there.
Security clearance paperwork for people listening.
Security clearance. So I have maintained either a secret or a TS, top secret clearance with numerous different organizations for 20-some years. So I've never done anything bad enough to lose my security clearance or to not get one because all my misbehaviors were before that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I wanted to do the Army thing. I really, so I wanted to be a medic. An 18 Delta, because I wanted, in my head, I was going to go be an 18 Delta. I've heard about these medics, man. These dudes are wizards in the field, man.
They're phenomenal.
They are. So that's what I wanted to do. But my career path, what I really wanted to do, maybe go to Halo school, get some sniper schools, some cool guy schools, and then I wanted to go to medical school. I wanted to be a doctor. That was where I thought I was going. Clearly, none of that ever happened.
You would have had to revisit the college aspect.
Yeah.
MD.
And it's funny because my older sister is an amazing, world-renowned pediatric endocrinologist in the biotech world. I mean, she's like helped cure things that like a very small amount of these kids had or whatever. Mm-hmm. And so she's the doctor, and it was kind of funny because now she's more in the business side of medicine. And, I became the business person first, and she was the doctor. It was like we had, I don't know, and maybe we should blame it on my dad. But 9/11 happened, man, and then it was just deployment after deployment after deployment. And like we said earlier, man, it was just all about, you're supposed to be home for 30 days at a minimum. I would beg, borrow, steal, go get on a plane without asking to get back over there.
I know guys who would figure out ways to just stay over there.
Yeah.
Their rotation would end, and they'd figure out a way to augment or, I'll stay back and make sure that this gear is turned over. Wink, wink. And where's Bob? That is how my original deployment to Afghanistan happened, right? It was like, okay, I'm there with 5th group. 5th group's packing up to leave. And so 3rd group comes in, 19th group comes in, and they're like, okay, well, you're going to stay in place and be the continuity piece during the, while this team rips out your team. Okay, cool. And I never left. Yeah.
I just continued to hang out. I was like, okay.
It's a varsity move. That's how you do that.
Right.
So how'd your career progress post 9/11? How many years did you do in the Army?
So initially 8 years.
Okay.
I broke my back, and I thought my career was over. I had a flight packing in. Instead of being a doctor, I was like, ooh, yeah, these Apaches, those things are awesome.
The Warrant program.
Yeah. So I was ready to get home from a deployment. I was going to go to flight school. It had already been approved. It was going to happen. I was like, heck yeah. Little fall, broke my back. And I thought my career was over. The doc said, if you walk again, you'll be lucky. You'll probably always be on a cane or some crutches. year later, I was running again, PTing again. So I called up all my buds who had worked with the OGA and stuff and was, can I get a job? In the interim, waiting for my security clearance, I did a couple of trips with Triple Canopy.
Yep.
Got my first team leader spot there, shift leader spot there. Had an amazing leader from that, amazing guy named Jay Christie. He'd been a ranger in Mogadishu and then gone to the unit. And then he flew helicopters. And as a warrant, he went down to the AMU and was the commander of the action shooting team.
Really?
Yeah, and he's still like a super senior badass on the USA team and stuff in his 60s now, still shooting USPSA like a machine.
Honestly, I'm jealous of the flight program the Army has.
Yeah.
And for people listening, correct me if I'm wrong, because obviously I wasn't in the Army, but you become a warrant officer, which they have warrant officers in the Navy. And so I did 12 years enlisted and 5 commissioned. And I
really?
commissioned I was an LDO. Super heavy. It's limited duty officer.
Okay.
Super heavy on the limited and light on the duty and also on the officer. I tell people that the fact that I was selected to be commissioned is proof that the military advancement system is flawed because somehow I slid through. But the Navy has warrants too. You put the same package in, and you could either become a warrant in the teams, or at least this is the way it was when I was in. I believe they've shut down the LDO program, but the warrants were generally 8s and 9s, guys who were senior, had a lot of experience,
right.
but they wanted to move to a different place because they're officers. But I would find that some officers would be like, "Yeah, you're officer asterisk," like
right.
officer light. It was a great position as long as they could find the right spot. And then
Right.
so for me, I just commissioned and became an ensign. I was a line officer. But for you guys in the Army, you guys can go from boots on the ground to flying those awesome freaking helicopters,
Yeah.
and they make you a warrant along the way, right? Because you
Right.
have to be an officer to fly.
Yeah,
And that's
so
the path that they make.
When you go through flight school, you have to go to the WOC, the Warrant Officer program first. First, and then you go to Rucker to fly. And back in the day, all warrant officers had to go to that initial school, and it was like basic training all over again, and they treat them like crap. And then
That's going to go over well
Right.
if dude's been in for 10, 12 years.
right, well, it was just, and that was, no one wanted to do it. So the evolution of things was the pilots didn't want to go through boot camp again. SF warrant officers, and that's the 2 biggest pools of warrant officers in the Army. They basically eliminated that stuff and created their own warrant schools, right? And got rid of all that, hazing and smoking and, getting smoked stuff. And so, like you were saying with y'all's program, that's kind of what SF warrant officers do. They're enlisted guys. They should have, doesn't mean they always do, 2, even 3 MOSs. So, they're Bravo, a Charlie or Bravo, a medic, and a Fox, an intel guy. And then they can become a warrant officer. And the whole idea is he's a technician. He knows everything and can be a team leader in the absence of a captain. Now, over in the whole pilot realm, they're just pilots. All the way up to like CW4, maybe it's CW3. I mean, so they can fly, whereas, an officer, just like an SF, their operational time is going to be short.
Egg timer.
Right.
Same in the SEAL community. Once you
Right.
pass, like your best role is probably going to be a platoon commander,
Right.
which would be like a captain at ODA.
Right.
Other than that, you might bump up one and you're going to be like a troop chief, so you'll be overseeing 2 maneuver elements, and after that,
Yeah.
you are getting a desk.
Once you're a major or a captain and go to staff, go to the company staff or battalion staff, now you're a major, maybe you get a company command, But the pilots, they get to fly.
Yeah.
And they'll fly until they retire as 3s and 4s or even CW5s, like in the National Guard, because the National Guard breaks all the rules for time and space. But you'll see, there are still 60-some-year-old CW5s flying. And at the beginning, right, I don't know if you guys ever used them, but, you couldn't get daggone TF to fly for you, especially they weren't flying in the daytime ever.
I flew with them a lot, but only when I was in the East Coast. When I was at the command, they were the only thing that
Right.
we used. Yeah.
Heck, some of the best pilots I ever worked with were Mississippi National Guard pilots, Louisiana.
Oh, yeah.
I'm looking at these dudes, I'm like, I'm not sure that dude, he should have retired after he got done with Vietnam. Why is he still flying? And I'm pretty sure he's drunk.
Full handlebar stash with
Yeah.
a helmet on sideways, more tobacco in their lip than
Right.
and just flying a Chinook like they
Shooting an
stole it.
M4 out of a Chinook window. You're like, what are you doing? Crashing it into things and mountains and still flying. They were awesome. They would do anything we asked them to. And so
even when they shouldn't have.
Absolutely should not have, right?
Like, what do you want us to do? We want you to do this, and it's wildly dangerous.
How about if we do it upside down? You're like, okay, Chief, yeah, we can do that.
Dude's scarf is like in front of his face as he's trying to hit a tight LZ.
Yeah, and they would tell you stories about Vietnam. And you're like, you were flying in Vietnam? You're still flying, Grandpa? You know? And that's, SF Guard was a little bit the same way.
They're cowboys, man.
Yeah. You know?
Yeah, I deeply respect it.
Yeah, it's a whole different world.
But they're all warrants though, right? Are there any like captains that are flying?
So like a captain would be a company commander. Wait, no, the captains fly just like warrants, and then it's a major who'll be a company commander for your lines. I think it's a lieutenant colonel over at TF.
Really?
That's a company.
Yeah,
but
I think almost all the pilots, if not all of them that I ever worked with a bunch, they were all warrants.
Yeah.
It's I am not aware of a Navy program that exists like that, where you could be like, say you're on an aircraft carrier, which don't ever go on one.
Yeah, okay.
Spent 14 days on the Kitty Hawk going from Guam to Australia, and I saw some weird shit. Life at sea is not the life that I want.
No.
So,
and that's,
but there,
and that's you saying it as a Navy dude. Me, I'm just like,
I spent 17 total days on a naval vessel in 17 years, though. So
that's awesome.
A limited exposure.
Yeah.
And my limited understanding of the flight deck on an, I mean, it's like a symphony of things going on. There's like people moving stuff, and the dude who's like the Top Gun, like on his knee, like, get out of here. But I don't think there's a path for those guys to get into the cockpit.
No.
And I think it's really unique that the Army has that. And I think there is so much to be gained. Can you imagine an Apache pilot? The difference between a guy, let's say, who comes out of an academy and learns how to fly a rotary wing and goes overseas, first pump, a dude who's been in the Army for 8 years, flying an Apache after 6 years of combat deployments on the ground, probably a JTAC,
right?
And just understands completely the radio communication, what they're looking for. I mean, the difference is just hard to describe.
On the flip side, do you ever work with any of the JTACs that were pilots?
Oh, yeah, they're amazing.
They were awesome.
Yeah.
That
they're like, don't talk like that. They can't see that.
Yeah.
I'm like, why can't they see that tree? I'm like, well, he's currently at 20,000 feet, dumbass.
Yeah. He has no idea where you're at. He's 30 miles away.
Yeah. Can you see the Earth?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That is our new anchor point.
Yeah. All that stuff was awesome, and, so yeah, I wanted to fly, after, the beginning of Afghanistan where we had no air support, the ceiling, minimal ceiling was 10,000, and, they were worried about all the, different stingers. And
Did you ever see one?
Yes.
Did you? I never did.
No, not the rocket, just the housing. Like they had shot it,
I never saw one, but they came up on every brief.
Yep, we bought them. No. And every now and then some farmer would bring one and drop it off at the team house, and we're like, but it was always they had been shot.
Yeah,
they just shot them for fun, which
I also deeply respect that.
Right. If let's say we're just a bunch of redneck kids, and there's a pile of rockets, and you're drinking and smoking maybe a little hash, and let's shoot the rockets.
With probably no respect for backblast.
Absolutely not.
Yeah, those are some of my favorite videos. And I don't know what that says about me as a person.
How many Afghani kids were hurt by Stinger missiles in the mid-'90s and late '90s just because we left them there?
And for people listening who don't know what backblast is, let's use an RPG as an example, which people probably are familiar with. Most people are worried about what's coming out of the front of the RPG, which you should be worried about. Fortunately, they don't fly very straight. They often corkscrew. But when you pull the trigger on that sucker, the amount of energy that comes out of the back can also kill you. Right. And I mean, how many like law ranges have you go to or AT4? Like it's procedural. You're checking left, you're checking right. You have a safety guy looking behind you. You're calling out backblast clear.
Yeah. Because
if you crack the thing off, people go flying, and there are so many videos on the internet.
And people don't realize just how loud these rockets are.
Like the Carl G?
Yeah.
Oh, shit.
Yeah, the recoilless rifle, that thing, right? Like you're only supposed
recoilless
to shoot.
ass.
You can only shoot 3 a day, and like Rangers have got a stack of freaking shells laying there. Yeah.
I love how they call it recoilless because it feels like you're getting elephant stomped in the chest every time you pull the trigger.
Yeah, there's no recoil, but there's lots of overpressure. Call it what you want. I still have a TBI from it.
Yeah. No, I love backblast videos where people are getting ready to shoot and somebody runs by, and the last thing you see is them completely horizontal with their feet going off the screen.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. It's like, yeah. And you would think we would learn, or they would learn, but we do it too. There's videos of
for sure,
plenty of our guys doing it.
Yeah,
AT4s, that thing will rock your world.
Yeah, front and back end, people. If you're going to shoot a rocket, also look behind you.
Yeah, maybe don't shoot them from inside small rooms either.
Or if you do, put a GoPro out in the building across the way, because I would like to see it.
Yep.
Those are amazing.
Yeah, it was always fun when dudes would shoot RPGs out of buildings and blow themselves out of the window with it.
God, I could watch those all day. Like I said, I don't know what that actually says about me. I'd laugh so hard.
Well, you know what? We develop a little bit of a sense of humor that's not dry. It scares a lot of people, you know? I had a little headbutting contest. You know, when I first got on social media, I've been running the gym. I had a Facebook page because it's local. And then I got on Instagram and I started, teaching some shooting stuff or whatever. And every shooting instructor, you know how they are, their way's the best way.
Yeah,
and
there's only one way.
My way.
Yeah.
And I've always been like, yeah, man, do it however you want. If it works, are you getting your hits? Are you fast? Cool. I don't really care.
Yeah.
And, bumping heads or something. And, I basically like shooting a bolt gun. I don't pin the trigger to the rear. And that's what we're all taught. But I quit doing it at some point in my career, and I go for the bolt quick. Okay. Well, once you press the trigger, man, the bullet's out of the muzzle. Pinning the trigger to the rear, it helps you learn a good trigger press, but it doesn't do anything.
I think it would help you on a long range, like precision shot. Right. But if you're talking about multiple rounds,
I'm talking precision, right? Like if you watch me shoot a ball gun, freaking, and
if you can control your trigger pull, you don't need to pin it to the rear.
Because once you're through the cycle, that round's gone before you've pinned it.
It's a great way to teach people, though.
It's absolutely that is how it should be taught. The fundamentals are left and right limits. Guidelines are not rules. Because let's face it, if I'm shooting a person at 250 meters, I don't need the same fundamentals I do at 1,250 meters.
Accurate.
Right? And it's funny, I change how I shoot per the target, right? The target always tells us what we should do. Long story short, somebody saw me and they're like, you're slapping the trigger. And I'm like, I'm not slapping the trigger. You can hear the hits. And it was like, I was engaging 1,200 meter targets and you can hear it. I'm like, I'm getting hits, right? So I can't be wrong. I'm not doing it wrong if I'm getting hits, right? That should be your ultimate judgment. And I'm like, I'm not new. I'm not a new shooter. Went to sniper school a long time ago, right? And anyways, this kid, he just kept pressing. And I was like, all right, bro, whatever. Just kill yourself. And I said that on the interwebs.
Yeah, that's a ballsy move.
Oh, my God. But you know how it is. Like, yeah, whatever, bro. Shoot yourself in the face. Suck start your Glock.
I can say that to my closest friends.
Right.
My closest friends aren't on the internet, though.
Yeah, well, I didn't know the rules for the interweb and the inner tubes and I call them the flies. All the super awesome Gucci Glock young guys. That little gun culture. Dude, they got upset with me.
Yeah.
And they started talking to me about how bad suicide was, and I'm like, okay, guys, I've had some buds kill suicide. First dead body I ever saw in my life was a suicide, a family member, and I was way too young. For the time I had my gym, I used to let combat vets train for free, and at one point it was like 70 people at $100 a month. Do the math. That's what I was given. And, so I've tried to do a lot. I've helped with, different organizations and stuff. And so I got a little pissed. I'm like, hey, you little fuckers, my sense of humor is different than yours. Like, no, in no way, shape, or form that I actually mean that I wanted this kid to actually go harm himself, right? Suicide's a horrible thing. It's a punk way out. It affects so many people. It's absolutely horrible. I'm not insensitive to it. I have, just like all of us, we have way too many of our friends who have decided that was their way out.
Yep.
And it sucks. So anyway, I was just being, that dry sense of morbid, whatever horrible sense of humor that we have. Well, the internet is not the place for it. And it was before Instagram had the Like these days, I think if you said, "Hey, bro, maybe off yourself," or suck Stark at your Glock or something, like Instagram would filter that, right? They would catch
Probably.
you. Back then, you could say whatever you want, and. So anyway, yeah, man, our senses of humor are just, that's one of the things I've had to really start watching is that, with the gym, I had a kind of a lull between the gym and then starting to shoot and hang out with the guys again. And, at the gym, I stopped cussing. Let's face it, if you got Sally the soccer mom who came to your CrossFit gym or whatever type of gym, you can't be like, hey, lump, maybe you quit eating donuts and you'll be able to do a pull-up sometime in your life.
She's not coming for the team room banter.
Right. She's not coming back after you do that. Yeah. So I learned how to talk to people. I learned how to instruct better because I wasn't talking to us anymore. We can talk to us any way we want. No one's,
I say the most horrendous shit ever to my friends.
Horrible stuff.
The other, here's a good example, and this is like a non-military example, but I learned this skill while in the military. I do jiu-jitsu a block away. My fiance teaches there, and there's this massive 260-pound fucker who just started, who's like riding a goddamn bull. So he and I were rolling. We laugh our asses off the entire time. At the end of class, he's talking to my girlfriend, and he's asking her for like a doctor recommendation. And all I hear is, hey, do you have a recommendation for a doctor? And I look at him like, do you need to get your vagina checked? And she's just like, you can't fucking talk to people like that. He starts dying laughing.
Right.
And she was just like, oh my God, you can't say that. And I was like, first off, I just did. And second off, he knows that I like him because I said that. He's like, yeah, actually, I would be worried if he didn't say something like that. But I don't expect everybody to understand that.
No, and I guess living in my small bubble, and we all live in some sort of a bubble, no matter how big or small it is, right? Even my civilian friends, like most of my civilian friends could go to selection. If they had chose that path, they'd be
That's
part
why
of our community.
They're your friends.
Right, because they're a lot like me, and they're tough guys, they're hunters, and they're brash, and the shit talking is just part of it. Right, it's part of the fun. It's seeing. It's kind of like young men are going to play fight, and no different than puppies fight with each other, right? And cats fight with each other. We all do that growing up, but that witty exchange, that's exercise for the brain and the thoughts, and So anyway, yeah, I got a little feedback from the internet one time on that, but
we call those teaching points.
Yeah, I mean, I learned something, and at the same time, I also learned that holy crap, young American men are way too sensitive these days.
Yeah, the suicide one is a tough, the off. That's a tough one, but I would agree with you on the sensitivity level. Yeah. It's almost as if outrage is a currency.
Right, it is, and especially on socials. Yeah, for sure.
And I don't understand necessarily why, because I do 100% believe that social media, even though it's not a real place, can have real world impact. My daughter has dealt with bullying, but at the same time, somebody acting like a jackass on your Instagram page, you have a choice as to how much that actually impacts your life. Right. You know what I mean? Like, I don't discount that it can, but I do think that people would be better served if they had a slightly tougher set of skin on them and weren't looking for reasons to be outraged.
I think that's it, right? We live in a place that is so luxurious. The poorest people in this country still have it pretty good. I was in Portland, and the Uber driver, we drove by like a park full of tents, like REI tents, man, not crap tents. And I'm like, what's going on over there? She's like, oh, that's where the rich homeless people live. Because they had REI tents. And I was like, oh, okay. But, we don't have real problems, not to say
comparatively,
all Americans, right? Like, and especially guys like us who have been around the world, not just to Afghanistans and Iraqs and Syrias, but just other third world countries on JSETs and
all the 1-star TripAdvisor locations.
Right. And I always tell people, I've worked in Haiti quite often, and I'm like, if you want to see something that can make you appreciate all your problems, you can fly to Miami and in 90 minutes be standing in the Port-au-Prince airport. And you don't have to leave the airport. You can get right back on that same plane you landed in, and you will have seen all you need to see. And we're just spoiled, you know, and don't get me wrong, right? Like I can be the tough guy and be like, hey man, the next generation needs to learn to change their own oil or change a tire or just, you know, whatever, man, maybe throw a punch or take one. And because, I mean, let's face it, with all the anti-bullying stuff in schools, I don't think they removed the bullies. They removed the kid that would step in and interdict the bully.
Yeah.
Right? Because everyone's going to jail. So
or they push the bully to the social media realm.
Right.
Which
is easy, right? Anyone can be a social media bully. It requires no real spine.
And you can't escape it. I remember the bully. We all grew up around bullies.
Yeah.
And trust me, I'm not advocating for anybody being bullied at all. But when I went to school, you know, if you could make it through the school day, you're like, Jesus Christ, at least I don't have to deal with this asshole until tomorrow.
Right.
You push them into that, you know, internet world, and I see this. I will hear it with my daughter's phone when she stays with me. Her bedroom is right next to mine, and I can hear the notifications going off on her phone. And I'm not saying that she's being bullied 24/7, but if she was, and you don't actively shut all that stuff off, you can't fucking escape it.
Right.
So you know, it's
because
not
they
like,
have access and placement to her 24/7.
And then there's this weird.
Yeah.
There's this weird, and this is totally anecdotal. I don't have any evidence to support this, but it seems like there's this weird piling on. Once a little bit of traction, like so, say a kid gets called out for their shoes to completely make something up. It's like one comment begets 2, begets 6, begets 8, and then people who they've never even met in their life are piling on, and you can't escape the shit. That's so different to me than
mob rule, right?
Yeah.
These are all inherent human natures that have happened since we were, you know, running around with spears and stuff, right? All this stuff has already been happening. Bullying's not new, you know, that type of stuff, but social media has changed it. And, you know, stimuli adaptation. We haven't adapted, right? No more than we have adapted for getting into car accidents, right? Like we're not designed to get into, we were never designed to go 90 mile an hour, right? We haven't evolved to the technologies. In other words, right, we can put an airbag in there, but human beings still can't take impacts at, you know, speed limit.
Yeah.
Right? We can't even take it at 20. So we haven't evolved and adapted to these technologies because like now, like you said, you can pile up your daughter or any young person with a phone. It's, you know, it's access and placement. It is, they can fire at them nonstop. And, you know, it's like, you know, how do we solve it? Well, Americans, like everything, we think there's one solution to every problem. Well, I always use like the invasion thing, right? It's not just tanks online. It's some reconnaissance dudes, some rangers taking airfields. You know, there's echelons and more than
SEALs
one approach.
looking handsome.
Well, yeah.
1,000-yard stare, just observing things.
That's an implied task, right? Roles, duties, responsibility, implied task. SEALs look great. We know that. You know, freak. You know, I always, you know, the most best looking, awesome, physically fit SEAL, Seth Farwell, right? You knew Seth.
Yep.
You know?
I did my first. It was my second platoon. He was in his first.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Crazy fucker, right?
Unfortunate.
Yeah.
Fucking the way he passed.
Horrible.
Yeah.
Oh man, his memorial service, you know, it was like 200 soft dudes. I was like, holy crap! Coeur d'Alene, Idaho is now either the most dangerous place or the safest place on the planet.
Or both simultaneously.
At the exact same time.
Yeah. Yeah, that guy looked like he was chiseled out of marble.
Oh, always. And, you know, yeah, that's how y'all are supposed to look in my mind. You know, if a SEAL doesn't look like Seth Farwell, man, he's just not really a SEAL.
Most of us aren't really a SEAL then, because that dude was, they broke the die with that guy.
Man, you know, he was on my team, Triple Canopy. He worked with me. You know, his story, right? Like every job he ever had, he lost it, but no one ever got mad at him. Like it was just Seth losing his job because he was huge and
doing Seth shit.
Yeah. I mean, that dude couldn't sit in a chair without breaking it. You know, I used to joke like you could give Seth two ball bearings, come back in 20 minutes, and one of them would be broken and the other one would be pregnant.
That's accurate.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good description, actually.
Yeah, you know, I don't know, man. There's got to be a little bit of, you know, why are kids so susceptible?
Because the technology, to bowling, I was going to say to the technology.
Yeah.
The technology, I think, is designed to be addicting.
Right.
Because if you think about it, at the end of the day, it's still people trying to sell you shit, and what they're trying to get from you is your attention and your time.
A like is a redeeming thing, right? You get a bunch of likes, a bunch of views, and all that. And it's like, oh, okay, that's validating everything I'm doing. And now I feel great about it. You know, where I think I'm not susceptible to that. I wasn't raised like that. It's not part of my genetic expression. So, you know, I was raised that, you know, hey, you know, words don't hurt, you know, and if they keep it up, you know, smash them, you know, and if you get beat up, then you get beat up, you know.
There's a lesson learned in that too.
Right. You know, I mean, I was not a, you know, very physically gifted young person. You know, in the rural redneck place I grew up, I got smashed and smashed and smashed. I don't think I had a successful little fist fight in school till like I was in the 10th grade. I'm pretty sure I sucker punched that dude. But, you know, why are kids so susceptible to bullying these days and getting their feelings hurt? Well, it's that outrage. It's that, you know, the lack of parenting. You know, if you're just going to hand a kid from the time they're, you know, 2 a pad and they sit in the back seat, you know, or whatever, you know. I mean, there's so many different parts of the problem, so there's got to be so many different parts of the solution. And I don't know, I feel like our culture has just gotten away from looking for solutions. We like to blame and point fingers and fuss, but no one ever wants to talk about solutions, real ones.
I feel like people are incentivized to turn away from adversity as opposed to working their way through it.
Yeah, path of least resistance.
I mean, look at how they make the plates that we would wear, right? The Kevlar. It's not a chunk of Kevlar that is one continuous piece. It's layer after layer after layer after layer that eventually becomes, you know, people would say bulletproof. They're not, just for clarity, everybody. They're resistant. But they do that because they layer and layer and layer and layer. And adversity, at least in my opinion, is the same way.
Right.
I don't want anybody to be bullied. But if you have to deal with that or are forced to confront uncomfortable situations, like that's a layer. And then you can put another layer and another layer. And you can develop a level of resilience where not only does the bullying, it doesn't impact you, it actually drives you to want to smash that motherfucker because you have no tolerance for it.
You know, resilience could be replaced with the word confidence.
Yeah.
If a young man or woman, young child, whatever, it has self-confidence, it's much harder for them to be bullied because the things the bullies are saying can't get underneath their skin.
Bullies don't go after people that exude self-confidence.
You're right.
They're looking for the weakest target, which is why they're, in the end of the day, when you push back on a bully, almost always they fold because they're a fucking coward.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, they're just pushing around the easy little targets. And like I said, I feel like, you know, I was kind of the dude. There was a young man that I went to school with or church with, really. He's 2 years younger than me, and he had a little bit of, you know, developmental issues. And he had, I believe they call it a cleft palate.
Yep.
So he spoke pretty funny, right? And he got picked on a lot. And there was this one kid that picked on him, and I fought that kid at least 4 times over him picking on it at church.
So that kid was a slow learner too.
Right. And looking back, I'm like, that was who we removed from the equation, right? Because everything's an equation with a result. Nothing's 2 + 2 = 4, right? In life, or really anything we do. And so the anti-bullying campaigns, like immediately when 2, 8-year-olds get in a fight in the 3rd grade or whatever, you know, the cops are going to come. Wait, what?
Yeah.
The cops?
Not a great utilization of our resources.
No, not at all, right? You know, we removed the kid that would step in and interdict that bully and stand up for the weaker kid. And it was almost like we didn't recycle that anti-bully kid into something better. We just kind of folded him into all the other kids with thin skin. You know, I don't know. And I'm not a parent. So I tread really lightly on parents because, you know, I've always kind of tried to subscribe to it. Like, if you're doing a job that I don't really want, I can't be but so, you know, hard on you the scrutinization, I've got to kind of step back and be like, I can have empathy, but I will never understand your job.
Yeah.
You know?
There is no way to understand it unless you go through it.
I did help raise Seth Farwell, so I feel like I'm fairly qualified to raise
As
any
did most
kid out there.
people who his life touched were in some way, shape, or form in a parental role.
Right.
Yeah.
At some point. Oh, man, a whole different story. But when we were all living in Wilmington, in North Carolina together, it was like, hey, man, a couple of WPD guys just rolled Seth up. Oh, you're in bed? Hey, can you meet me down there? Freaking maybe. And instead of getting taken into jail, they just hand him back over to me.
Yeah.
That happened like 3 times. God bless him. Whew. What a mess, man.
What a mess and a tragic end.
Yeah.
A unique individual for sure. They truly broke the mold.
Absolutely. And like you said, super tragic. And because he had quit, he had grown up
Yeah.
and was mostly behaving himself.
Yeah. He's in a different phase of his life for
Right.
sure.
Right. You know, some of us are a little slow learners. I mean,
Yeah. Myself included.
yeah, all of us, right? I mean, yeah, that was a mess, man. Freaking. But anyway, it was so funny because like now I'm friends with so many different guys that because of Seth and the internet and social media that you knew him? Where'd you work with him? Or you knew him? Where'd you work with him? And, you know, over a 15-year span of war and stuff, holy crap, we all know each other because of that dude? Okay.
That's the positive power of social media and the internet to me, is that level of connectivity and how you can stay in touch. There's just, man, there's a dark side of that coin that I agree with you. We haven't figured out or haven't evolved to be able to deal with that explosively growing technology.
Yeah. That's why a lot of times when people say, you know, social media this, social media that, and I look at mine, I'm like, I don't know that there's anywhere, definitely not in America, that I can't go today and I could be like, hey, I'm here. Anybody want to grab a coffee? You know, last year I had the most amazing year of hunting I've ever had. And every single hunting trip except for one was linked to someone I met on social media.
That's awesome.
2 ranchers who just said, hey, I like what you put out. I've learned a lot from your shooting videos. You want to come hunt on my ranch?
Yes.
Absolutely. The only hunt that didn't was a do-it-yourself public land hunt in Idaho that was, you know, every year I go and do it, and I ruck around the mountains in the snow, and I keep not getting an elk. I always see them.
Bow or rifle?
Rifle. You know, it's a late season hunt.
Yeah.
And, you know, for us to come from the East Coast and say, oh, I'm just going to go bow hunt, you have almost a 0% success rate. With a rifle, at least you have like a 5% success rate.
Yeah.
And, you know, again, another Idaho hunt where I saw a couple bulls on the second day, and they're the last ones I saw. 9 days in the mountains living out of a backpack. But it's still good hunting. You know?
That's good living.
It is. You know, it's a reminder of our roots and carrying that rucksack and all that. But, you know, it was kind of cool because turned around, went home from Idaho and turned right around, came up here and on the other side of the mountains. And by 8 a.m., me and my buddy and his wife had 3 elk on the ground.
Awesome.
Yeah. You know, countdown and 3 elk on the dirt.
That's the way to do that. That's how you do that.
Yeah.
We call that an ambush, you sons of bitches.
Yeah. It was like, you know, the sun come up, I glassed this much. I went from like, let's say 6 o'clock. I got him. And my buddy Johnny, he was like, what? I'm like, oh, there's at least 80 in our herd.
Yeah.
Lots of bulls. And they were over 2 miles away, and I'm just on binos. Didn't even bother pulling the spot and scope out because I'm like, they're bulls. And if there are 80, they're bulls.
For sure.
Let's go.
Just get to shooting distance and then
And
figure
we
it out.
just, you know, trekked on over there, and the sun was coming up, man. They were trying to get to the woods.
Yeah.
And, you know, our last covered concealed spot right at 700 meters.
Perfect.
And on the one of one, we put 3 elk on the dirt.
That is how you do that.
Yeah, and it's kind of cool. You know, he and I, that fellow, we worked together quite a bit, and we shot long range together quite a bit. And his wife, my girlfriend, they all shoot long range and stuff. It's cool to be able to go and hunt that stuff, you know, and have that long range capability.
Yeah.
You know, I always tell folks, I would rather shoot an elk at 10 meters.
For sure.
But if I have to shoot him at 7 or 8
Oh, I
or
will.
1,000, if it's last light on last day,
Yeah.
yeah.
I will take the opportunities that present themselves.
But, we train for it too, 1,000-meter shot with a 300 PRC
can be okay.
on an elk's vitals that's the size of a watermelon.
Yeah, half the size of this table.
Right. I'm going to be okay. I can hit that.
Yeah.
As long as the wind's not too bad or the terrain's not absolutely screwed up. But, yeah.
So why would you want to give up all that for politics? Question of the day.
You know what? I still don't have a very good answer for that. You're clearly not the first person who's asked me.
So what day did you announce that you were going to run for Congress?
It was like the 16th of December. So still only 3.5 weeks ago. What
had happened in, say, the week or 10 days leading up to that? I would imagine there had to have been a tipping point.
It was a little longer than that. The original conversation actually happened on Easter Day of last year. Me and a friend of mine who ran for Congress a few years ago, and he did not win, but between him and the guy he was running against in the primary, they did flip the District 7, New Hanover County, Wilmington, North Carolina. They flipped it, but he did lose the primary to the Republican who ultimately won. And we were just chatting. He's a vet, a Marine who, well, I'll tell you straight up, he's a good friend of mine. Ilario Pantano, lieutenant type, Fallujah, charged with murder. He was the lieutenant. His platoon had taken casualties in Fallujah. They were getting the shit kicked out of them, like Marines were in Fallujah. And his battalion were the warlords, and their motto is no better friend, no worse enemy. So these two, you remember the rules of Fallujah: get out, or you're getting killed.
Yeah, you're going to be considered a combatant.
Well, it was days into the battle, and these were two combatants, and they had AKs and they had RPGs in their car, and they stopped, and it got a little hectic, and Ilario shot them. And again, I'm not an armchair quarterback, and I've read every bit about it. Bottom line is, some JAG assholes went after him, and man, they tried to take his life. Yeah. And all of his troopers, all of his boys came out in his defense. They loved him. He took care of his boys. And yes, they were upset because they had lost their boys in the engagements prior to that. So anyway, after being hammered by a country that he loved very much, he made that decision to do this. And, I watched him go through it, and it was a lot of stress on him and his family. 2 young boys, wife, and I watched him go through all of it. And it was hard to watch because he was taxed so much. When he, 10 years ago when he was running, he didn't have social media. There was Facebook, but that wasn't how politics was advertised. It wasn't how anything was advertised back then, except for, whatever, your garden club or your gym.
Yeah,
right?
People were still figuring it out.
Right. So he was out there doing the, kissing hands, shaking babies type stuff. And I'm still working on that whole thing. I may have it backwards.
I actually prefer it that way.
Yeah. I think there's a syndrome that goes along with shaking babies. See, there's that horrible jokes that we're not, our sense of humor we're not supposed to have.
You can say whatever you want. Last I checked, the First Amendment applies to you as well.
Yeah, but the voters, no.
Yeah.
The cool thing is, hey, man, my district is a bunch of rural North Carolinians, and I speak rural North Carolinian, and they're hardworking and lots of farms. The only town is Fayetteville. And most folks that live in Fayetteville still know what it's like to be a little rural. But so I'm not really worried about ruffling any feathers. There's no feathers to ruff there. There's thick skin. But anyway, so me and Ilario, we were talking, and Easter Day, just this last year, I was like, look, man, you know me, I've never been involved. And when he ran, I supported him, but I wasn't like involved. I'm not an idealist, so I'm not an activist. I'm pragmatic and a realist. And, we were talking, and I brought it up, and he's like, if there was ever a time, it's now. He's like, someone like you can get in and win. He's like, people want real. People want no bullshit. He's like, that is you every day. It's like, yeah. He's like, you couldn't even pretend to be a politician. Yes, you have to do it. And like, he got excited. And I was like, whoa, man. Just throwing it out there. This isn't even an assessment phase yet. But but he was excited. Next day, he starts making phone calls and like, hey,
On
you
your
need
behalf.
to talk to this person. I'm like, okay, all right. He's like, he's moved to New York. He's like, I'm in Wilmington for only one more day. You need to come down here and talk to me. I'm like, okay, bro, all right. So we talked again. And then, of course, I had to talk to Melissa about it. And she was very reluctant. We had plans to move out here. We were looking at properties in Idaho and Montana.
That's a good call.
You know, we've been talking about that for quite some time. Like since we met, we've been together just over 10 years. And we were, things we started doing, climbing 14ers in Colorado, hunting in Colorado, and then, hunting and more hiking and, all that stuff. And so she wants to move out here. And she's like, whoa, well, what is it? That's a big change to our plans, and she's way more reserved than I am, right? As far as like, I don't care. I'll put a video on social media, and she's more like, she's got patients that she cares about and she takes care of her business and she has no aspirations of being a social media star, influencer, or in the limelight. Definitely not a politician, but even more so, a politician's wife. Because she even made a joke the other day. It's like, am I gonna have to get my hair cut like Hillary? Apparently, women.
First off, nobody has to get their hair cut like that. It's a choice. Okay.
Apparently, think about all the politicians' wives. They have that haircut, that little bob haircut. And it's a thing. Women know it, apparently. Because she was joking with her hairdresser, and they were like, oh my God, I could cut you like, Michelle Obama. They all have the same haircut. I did not know that. I didn't know how it got past me. But
you're forcing me down a Google image search later today.
Right? Apparently, the First Lady Trump, it was one of the first ones to break that tradition. And I don't know if it's a formal tradition or not, but the girls know about it. So Melissa is half Japanese and she has long black hair. And she's like, yeah, And also because she's half Japanese, she has a slightly larger head to body ratio than a lot of Americans. If she wasn't so jacked, she'd be built like a lollipop. And luckily she doesn't watch these or listen to these podcasts that I'm doing. So I can say pretty much whatever I want about her without a whole lot of ramifications. But since she's poisoned me, then I guess it all works out.
All started like a war.
But so yeah, that was a major conversation. And that conversation lasted for probably a month. And at one point someone asked us, so we're not legally married. And someone asked us about that. And I was like, well, what do you think, honey? In our eyes, we are married.
Yeah.
We've been together 10.5 years, man. She wears a ring that I gave her. I look at it like this, man. I'm not super anti-government, but I think the government has largely overstepped itself. So that's the big motivation for me is like, hey, let's reel this monster back in.
Yeah.
And part of that, right, to get married, you have to go get a marriage license.
Yep.
And make a contract with the state you live in. Well, she and I both agree that our marriage is between her and I and God, not the state of North Carolina. So, we're not married, not in that legally matter,
yeah,
right. So we also have very separate businesses, and we come together and share everything around the house and all that. But yeah, man, it was a long conversation with her, and finally she said, "Okay." Right. And she's a 100% type person, right? Once she makes a decision, a lot like me, it's, she will joke that like once I make a decision to do something, I don't care how many people have to die for me to accomplish my goal.
That's the world we came from, though.
Right. But she's worse than me.
That's a terrifying thought, actually.
Yeah. Yeah. Both of us, played with some 200-mile ultra marathons, and both of us 200-mile marathons have put us in the hospital.
Yeah, all that really says is that you guys should be committed
Won't
for
stop.
mental insanity.
Probably.
Why would you want to run 200 miles?
Just to say I did. Why do you want to fly 25 miles from out of a plane and stuff? What you did?
Because it's
25
awesome.
or something?
Because it's awesome and it doesn't require running 200 fucking miles.
Actually, you got me there. You know what? You absolutely crushed my entire point. You know what? That was, now that I think about it, like, yeah, exhilarating, fun, and not any of that.
Yeah.
Now, you know what I mean? Yeah, you know the deal. Guys want to do stuff. I have always hated running. Even when I was a runner and I had really good run times, I didn't like running.
It's like there's so much self-loathing wrapped up in running.
Yeah.
And don't get me wrong, I have nothing wrong with running, but the best thing about getting shot is that you don't have to run anymore.
Fair enough.
So
yeah, no, we did that kind of stuff. But yeah, so once we talked about it, she gave the go ahead. Then I actually started talking to folks. I started talking to my consultant. Everyone has a primary consultant, and that's good because they help lay out your strategy. They've, in my case, I'm lucky my consultant believes in me. And I know this because of, our initial talks and agreements and what he has or has not charged me. And he's a good American. He's not in it for the money. He's in it for trying to help America. And he's not really a campaign manager. He's a strategist, I guess, is the best way you would describe a primary consultant. And I'm very much still learning a lot of this stuff.
Yeah.
But talked to him, and it was weird because it was like he was interviewing me and I was interviewing him. It was the weirdest job interview that I had ever partook in because, he wanted to make sure that I was the type of candidate that he would join.
You guys were speed dating.
It was something like that, man. It was weird. So anyway, all that happened, and then I finally said, okay, yeah, for real, we're doing this. And it was midsummer last year. Okay, let's do this. So we started putting a plan together. Well, North Carolina gained a seat in the House because of population growth. Census said, okay, like California lost a couple. So we gained one of them. And so it was like, okay, we're going to be redistricted. We're gaining a whole new seat. Districts are going to change. And luckily, my consultant said, hey, man, you need to wait. You need to wait to announce. And I'm like, well, the sooner I get in the fight, the sooner I can fundraise, the sooner I get my name out there. And he's like, yep, I understand. But if you announce that you're going to run where you live right now, you're going to be announcing that you're going to run against an incumbent that's not disliked, right? He's not a rhino. He's not one of those people that's on anyone's radar. And by all accords, he's done some really good things for southeastern North Carolina.
But it would be an uphill battle.
So for me to try to fight him, I would piss him off. He's an incumbent of almost 10 years, so he has resources and friends. So for me to think I could go up against that Goliath would be arrogant and probably just stupid. So I don't, the play was wait to see what the districts look like. So when the districts were, passed in the state legislature, poof, now I live in this new district and there's no incumbent and I have Fort Bragg and its surrounding, areas. Okay, cool. We made the right choice, right off the bat. I'm like, okay, my consultant, man, he does know what he's doing. He made the right call right off the bat, and it was a huge call. So yeah, it wasn't something that we just decided that I pulled out of my ass 2 weeks before announcing. We had the infrastructure in play. The website was mostly ready to go, and we were just kind of waiting for that right time to put it out. And then, because it took so long for districting, so fundraising is done in quarters. December 31st, end of the quarter.
Yep.
To be considered a viable candidate for House of Representatives, they basically say the rule of thumb is you need to be able to raise $100,000 in your first 4 weeks of announcing. Okay, so now I have 2 weeks left in the quarter to get a good quarter, and that's a big deal too. So I got these two things, and they're kind of saying, okay, some people are saying, oh, you need to wait till January 1st, and we said, nah, that's how it's always been. And we're not doing things the way it's always been. That's the whole point of me running, is that I'm tired of the way things being the way they've always been, the same old, the establishment. So, yeah, we announced, and man, close of business, midnight, December 31st, with only 13 days, not 2 full weeks, 13 days of announcing. We raised over $130,000.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And it was because I did leverage my social media, from Mike Glover to Mike Jones, Grand Thumb, freaking Mike Knockout Lights. Everyone on Instagram in the gun world apparently.
I was just going to say, there's a lot of repetitive nature here.
Yeah, a lot of mics. All those guys, and if I know I'm leaving guys out, didn't mean to even name one name, but it's because so many folks across Instagram especially put the word out, shared every post that I did, and.
So you and I connected. I saw other people posting about it, or somebody tagged me saying, hey, be great to have him on. I'm like, yeah, of course.
Yeah. And, that's what it boils down to, is that, I'm just fed up with their BS. And as I've learned more and more, just like fundraising, it all favors corporations, right? Like I can donate to my campaign unlimited amounts, right? So let's say I had $1 million in a bank account. I don't. If I did, I probably wouldn't run. Right? I would just go continue
Buy a house
enjoying
in
my
Montana.
life, right? Because let's face it, man, I've turned down full-time positions, in living in Northern Virginia for over 15 years. I don't want to live up
That's
there.
a good call.
Right. I
To
don't
not
want to
live
live
in
up there.
Northern
It's
Virginia.
gross. So now I'm looking at DC. Yeah. So, yeah, we did really well in all the help. It was all about leveraging that social media. So we were able to make and just blow that goal out of the water. And of course, that gets me clout and traction. Now folks are looking at me as like, ooh, okay, this dude's a viable candidate. But even better than that, because that's more the old way. Oh, he raised money, so he's a viable candidate. I don't want to be a viable candidate because I have money. I want to be a viable candidate because people trust me to go up there and be their representative. That's been a big deal for me. Nothing on any of my stuff will say I'm running for Congress, right? And Cowden for Congress, that's good alliteration. It sounds good. And everybody thought that, no, I'm running to be a representative. And there's a difference. Because the word Congress means meeting. I've never been much on meetings, right? I was the team leader that never wanted to have team meetings, I don't want to do meetings. I'm running to represent the people of the 4th District of North Carolina and all of North Carolina and Americans, because let's face it, right? No longer are representatives and senators only representing their people. And I say that because you think for 1 second the things that Nancy Pelosi has imposed across America don't affect you in Montana and me in North Carolina, right? All the while her district is sinking in sludge and sewer, right?
I think at this point, people are taking a much more individual approach to the things that people in government are trying to impose.
Right.
Montana was very strict when the COVID lockdowns first kicked off. I cannot believe we're over 2 years into this, by the way. Actually, we're not.
Coming right up on 2 years.
Coming right up on 2 years. Because I'm gonna
February, March.
I think it was March, and I'll use that as my math here. So carry the one. We're just short of 2 years. I might almost needed to take off my shoes for that one.
Yeah.
But I mean, I remember. So we are where I met you in front of the karate school. Just is Main Street, Kalispell.
Cobra Kai
for sure. Main Street in Kalispell, and there I distinctly remember it looking like a ghost town. You could have walked down Main Street through the middle of the road when it first locked down, because I think we were all in the same place. Like,
we were worried.
So is this like a
Is this what's
going to
kill us?
Yeah, like a species existent, killer.
Yeah.
And not too long after that, but measured in months, but not weeks.
Right.
Montana largely opened back up, and we have been living our lives.
Yeah.
And there has never not been an emphasis on safety.
Right.
But what there has been is an emphasis on people making informed decisions about their life.
Crazy.
So when a politician in D.C. is saying, hey, we need to shut down all restaurants nationwide, Montana largely said, fuck off, and continued to live their life. Right. So although they did try, I would say, to create sweeping legislation that would apply everywhere, well outside of the districts that they're supposed to represent, I think a lot of states and a lot of communities and a lot of local municipalities are like, no, we're not doing this shit anymore.
Well, even in North Carolina, like I try to stay out of Wilmington these days, and it's a small city, but man, traffic lights drive me crazy. I'd rather sit behind a tractor or a combine and do 2 mile an hour
all day long.
Yeah. But rural North Carolina, where I live, it was as if, and still to this day, as if there was never any COVID.
Yeah.
The first few days, right? Like everybody was wearing masks. We were
until we had some data to support what's going on.
There, it was measured in weeks. Before it was like, meh, whatever. A little 24-hour gym never closed. The restaurants never closed. Of course, we in the nearest town to me is I live 20 miles from anything and everything in any direction. It's like, it's that whole
so do I.
Yeah, that whole geographic anomaly thing. And all those little towns, like some of those mandates were stifling and just choking the small businesses, whereas Lowe's was open.
So that's exactly what happened here as well.
It was so weird.
Local businesses, Main Street, there were some, paper that went up over windows and businesses that shuttered. I can think of a coffee shop.
Right.
I forget exactly what it was, but it's just catty corner from where we're sitting right here. But at the same time, again, Target was open in town. Walmart was open in town. Lowe's and Home Depot
Just had to wear a
were
mask.
open in town.
Just wear a mask.
Yeah, they were deemed essential, whereas the mom and pop stores were deemed inessential. And I believe in people making informed decisions, and I have no intent to diminish the impact that COVID can have on people. I've had it twice now. I caught the Omicron strain not too long ago, actually, and I thought I had a cold. I was shocked when I tested positive, and then did what you're supposed to do. I quarantined myself, stayed away from everybody, but I did that because I thought it was right, not because somebody else was, telling me to do that.
We used to do that with the flu just a couple of years ago. You get the flu, maybe you don't kiss your spouse or you don't kiss your kids. Maybe it's a little hug, pat, right? Even with the flu, we did that stuff. I still think Americans are smart enough to, if they go to a store and then the next day they're sick, right? And then their friends also say, well, when I was at the store, and now we're all sick. We can kind of figure it out, and if people want to make that decision, if you're a business owner and you want to shut down, cool. If you're a business owner and you want to stay open and people choose to come in and beep your patrons, that's America, right? At no point. In the first few months,
there's
it was scary.
Yeah.
Everybody was
the
afraid.
unknown is, right?
Right.
Largely for most people, fear of the unknown is one of the worst fears they can experience.
I prepped a little bit, me and Melissa made better plans for like link up and stuff. And we're not preppers by any means, but, threw an extra mag in her car, for a pistol, threw a 72-hour kit backpack in her car with some food and stuff like that.
This is generally just a good idea.
Just close, right? You should do it anyway. Out here, you guys kind of have to do that. You break down out here in the wintertime, you could freeze to death. In North Carolina, you pull off the side of the road, somebody's going to stop in a few minutes and help you. It's a whole different place. But yeah, it's like Americans, man, we have proven, because places like Montana, South Dakota, Florida, Texas, these states open back up soon, and the rates are pretty comparable to states who have mask mandates and vaccine mandates. And now let's face it, right? Like, I think we're just at a point now where the oppositions, either sides, neither one wants to admit they're wrong. And let's face it, right? If you're a team leader and en route to a target, ISR says, whoa, man, there must be some type of gathering, because on target this afternoon there was 3 guys and now there's 33 guys, but you only got a platoon worth of dudes. Do you really want to hit that target? Maybe we need to adjust.
Yeah.
And admit that our initial plan was not the right response to this target, because the target changed. What we knew about the target changed. So if COVID is a target and it is a threat, well then, and it is definitely changing, well, we need to adapt to how we address it. That's just basic targeting stuff, that.
It's a good analogy that some of the worst tactical failures that I ever saw were senior leaders that became very emotionally tied to the plan because they had a very heavy hand in creating it.
They needed it to be successful.
So they tried to force the real world to match their plan, as opposed to looking at what the real world was presenting and audibling to them. And I tell you, one of the biggest fails, and I've come to this realization recently when I tested positive for the second time, is I do think there's a role for the federal government in this, but it's not through it trying to impose their will via mandates, because that's robbing people of their ability to have an informed decision. And I think independence, the rugged independence of what this country was founded on, you can't fucking rob somebody of that. But I'm looking at, okay, so what could they have done? I think the biggest shortfall is testing. Because when I wasn't feeling great, I couldn't find a test. I thought I had a cold. I thought I legitimately just, because I had some sinus pressure and I had some sniffles. When I had COVID the first time, I had all of the traditional symptom, loss of smell, loss of taste. I'm like, this is probably what I'm hearing about on the news. Went and got tested.
Mm-hmm.
So this time I couldn't find a test. So I couldn't determine, do I just have a cold or do I, because with this newest variant, it's blasting through vaccinations and boosters. I have a family member who is double vaccinated and boosted due to his job requirement and got very sick. It's obviously infecting people who had had COVID before, where the thought, or at least in some circles, was there was huge immunity that came from that. So the best decision that it's not being contained very well with masks. So the best decision you could make is be able to determine whether or not you have it and then isolate. You could make an informed decision.
Yeah.
I couldn't find a test anywhere.
Really?
So I went to, and I had some travel coming up. And so I went to a medical facility to get tested, but I wasn't going to get my results back for 48 hours. And eventually, I went online and ordered a bunch of testing stuff. I finally got the results back. But to me, one of the best things that the government could do is ensure that everybody has all the testing supplies that they need.
Right.
Don't try to impose mandates on top of me. Empower me by providing me the ability or a tool that allows me to make an informed decision.
I say it all the time. The federal government should incentivize good behaviors, whether it's with corporations, with tax breaks. I'm like, heck, I want people to exercise their Second Amendment right. I think you should be able to write off an AR off your taxes. Let's get incentives, not regulations. Incentives, like if you could free up tax dollars from the average person, let's say, not average person, upper middle class, they make $150,000 a year. So if you could give them back $10,000 of whatever you're taxing them on, and then say, well, of that 10 grand, if you donate to charities, legit charities, 5 of it, hell, we'll cut you that tax break, And because I think a max charitable contribution now is like $2,000.
I do not know.
Yeah, I mean that's nothing. You know what I mean? When you're trying to write off stuff, $2,000 isn't a lot of money when you're talking 150, 200,000, and definitely not someone who makes $500,000. Well, let's face it, it's people who make $30,000 a year, $50,000 a year, and that's a lot of Americans, probably most Americans, and don't quote me on these numbers, but let's say a firefighter in North Carolina, they make probably right around $30,000. There are no incentives for them to do good things with their money because they just get the common write-off, right? So my point to all that is we won't get into tax code because Lord knows, our federal tax code, personal income tax code is now 10 times larger than the Bible, right? It's insane that we have to hire specialists.
Well, you read it every year, right?
No, I hire a tax attorney.
Yeah, you have to.
Who I'm not sure he knows the rules that well. And he does it for a living.
They know the rules really good up until they change them. And then they, just like any other occupation, they have to learn them again.
Constantly.
Yeah.
So anyway, yeah, man, the federal government's role is not to impose anything. The Constitution, I don't know, that crazy document that most folks in D.C. seem to want to wipe their asses with, the Constitution lays out the authorities, the things that the government can do, and its limitations, the things it cannot do. And it is as if they just erased that mess. They don't pay any attention to it. And the Constitution is only 5 pages long.
I think a lot of people forget that the Constitution was literally by design to limit the power of the federal government. I agree with you. I think that both sides are unwilling and for some reason unable to admit that mistakes were made along the way and they need to change their plan. And, and it's almost comical because you see, and this is why you'll see the fucking memes flying around, rules for thee, but not for me, because they're human beings too. And a lot of it seems like it's theater that is tied to party rhetoric on both sides. And you'll see people who are, you have to have these mask mandates, and then there's a dude with the cell phone who catches him at dinner without a mask, and which doesn't shock me at all because they're human beings.
Or OSHA mandates, right? Yeah. Like you have to get vaccinated. And who excluded themselves? The House, the Senate, and the White House. They don't have to. It's a personal choice. Well, why is it that way for them? there's so many different things, in the military career, right? Like, we're both old enough to know what it was like to shine boots.
Yeah.
Right?
Every fucking day.
Every day. Right? And sure enough, that sergeant major, that colonel, commander for you guys, right? Shine your boots, get haircuts, blah, blah, blah. And then sure enough, you look and his are scuffed up and that removes their credibility, right?
Yeah.
So that goes back to accountability. The difference between our commanders and our representatives is that we work for a commander, the representatives work for us. So, everybody talks about
Do they though?
They're supposed to, right? And that's why I think I am going to have a hard time in politics when I win.
That's the headspace you should have.
Right.
You're like, probably going to lose, but if I did win, I'd have a great run.
I'm starting to say, because I was saying if, and now I'm saying when. And the reality is we're getting some serious traction.
Yeah.
So I'm definitely going to have a hard time because I have always been the person who would be like, hey, this is effed up. This is effed up. You're not doing what you said you should do, blah, 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 general. As like an E6. I just was that. I would call out hypocrisy in a second. Like, my leaders are like, shut up. Just shut the fuck up.
Let's not invite Tony to this meeting.
Young, dumb, junior Charlie, shut up. So, yeah, another good topic, right? Like legalization of marijuana.
Yeah.
Right? Still a federal crime at certain levels or certain weights or whatever.
Yeah, I don't know the rules on it.
Yeah.
But what is it for it's got to be at least 2/3 of the state at this point have decriminalized it, to include Montana for both medicinal and recreational.
Montana's recreational now?
As of January 1st of last year.
Oh, no shit. Okay.
Yeah.
I didn't know. I knew it was medical, but
I think that
I'm still in the guard. So like I see a lot of guys. I was lucky through all my injuries, man, because I wasn't in the at Walter Reed and stuff. I was at other hospitals. I was never put on opiates.
Yeah.
Of any sort. I don't know what it's like to be on oxy. Now I have had morphine, right?
Yeah.
But I have seen what marijuana does for my friends. They sleep. They're not freaking out on PTSD. And I mean, these are just dudes that smoke a little bit at night. They're not, waking bacon. They're not potheads. They're going to work. They're doing their things. And I'm like, wow. And they're like, yeah, man, my joints don't hurt, my blah, blah, my plate in my spine, my plate in my neck, the rod in my leg. Wow, marijuana, and that's anecdotal, right? Because we've never had any real studies on what marijuana does for people. But I also know that when my stepmother was getting chewed up with chemotherapy, right? Remember I said she visited Afghanistan in the 60s?
Yeah.
She was a California girl, to make it through chemotherapy when she got cancer, she smoked marijuana and she was able to eat. And I can contrast that. So my stepmother died of cancer and my mother died of cancer. Both amazing women. My mother, a conservative, North Carolinian compared to my stepmom, California girl. My mom would have never entertained smoking marijuana, right?
Yeah.
But I saw the two differences. And it's like, wow, what was the difference? Marijuana, right? So, anecdotally speaking, I can look around and be like, okay, everyone I talk to who eats a gummy or smokes a bowl, right? They're getting benefits from it. And again, it's just like, hell, anything can be abused, right? I'm sure. I look at marijuana. I don't think anybody ever OD'd from marijuana. I don't know what it would take to OD from THC, but
I think you would take a nap long time before you OD.
Right. I mean, I used to get blistered as a teenager, and at no point was I worried about ODing on marijuana. But so, yes, you could wake and bake and just not be a productive citizen, but are you going to OD and your mom finds you 2 days later like heroin does? Probably not. I'm going to say most definitely not. So here's my question when it comes to legalization of marijuana. Who is keeping it illegal? The House and the Senate, right? Because I think America is probably at the point where they would be okay with legalizing marijuana because most states have. Yeah, the Bible Belt.
Yeah.
They're always resistant to stuff. Hell, it was only a few years ago North Carolina started allowing hunting on Sundays. You still can't buy booze till after noon in North Carolina on Sundays. So they're going to be a little resistant, but it's coming. But here's my question. If the feds are going to continue to lock people up and put them in cages over marijuana, right? We've decided that's what we're going to keep doing, House and Senate. Cool. I just want a urinalysis every month from every single one of you and your staffs.
Seems reasonable to me.
And yet not once ever have you ever heard another representative say what I just said. Why? Because from what I understand, some of the parties they throw in D.C. are pretty damn awesome.
You know, when it comes to, my mom died of cancer as well, and I left Afghanistan in 2010 off a Red Cross message, and she was definitely at the tail end of her journey.
That sucks. Yeah.
And she made the choice to stop the chemotherapy because it was fucking chewing her up.
Killing her.
Oh, my God.
Yeah.
So her choice was die through chemotherapy in an extremely painful manner or go into hospice care and make the decision. I think it empowered her to make that, to have a choice in
her
it.
terms.
And my dad would make her brownies, and it rounded the edges.
Yeah.
Well, it wasn't her first time having brownies. I was born and raised in Santa Cruz.
Right. Okay.
So
yeah. So she may have known my stepmother.
Here's the thing, though. It made her happy. It helped her.
Right.
It helped her feel better.
Right.
And I am not saying people should smoke weed. No. And I'm not saying they shouldn't. I'm saying we should have a conversation and allow people to make an informed decision on their own. In my own personal experience, again, anecdotal, alcohol is so much more destructive and addictive. And the behaviors that I have seen people drinking and the behaviors that I have had myself drinking pale in comparison to what I have seen with the use of marijuana.
Absolutely.
Let's at least have.
When was the last time you heard somebody smoking a blunt or a bowl or eating a gummy or two or a brownie and like breaking a beer bottle and shanking somebody? Yeah, no, that doesn't happen.
I'm sure it has happened, but
Right.
You know, I've seen families and marriages and lives destroyed with alcohol involved, and just this bottomless, insatiable desire.
We
and addiction.
know that alcohol is bad for us, without a doubt.
Yeah.
It is a poison. It is toxic to every cell in our body.
But it's legal if you're 21. Let's just have open conversations about it.
Yeah, and like I said, let's this whole rules for thee, not for me stuff. We need to address it because we have given them a pass at every step of the way. And I just used the marijuana thing as an example.
Yeah, it's a good one though.
It is a federal crime, but they're not getting checked. And I mean, come on. How many representatives and senators are smoking weed or worse or eating pills or whatever? I don't know.
I wouldn't have a problem with them smoking weed.
I don't either, but I do have a problem with them keeping it illegal. You know what I'm saying? Right?
The hypocrisy is what would bother me in that. Right. Again, I don't want an airline pilot flying high. No. Like but I also don't want them fucking flying drunk or
that's reasonable.
Yeah, or taking the prescription medication, which somehow is okay because it's prescribed by a doctor, but it has a cognitive effect. Like I'm not saying it should be uncontrolled, but let's have a conversation.
Let's talk about some standards. You know? Like, and that's a thing for our communities. We have these standards, and for the most part, they're adhered to. Right? There's always, like you said,
of course.
Our selection programs aren't perfect. Why? Because human beings design them, and human beings are not
super
perfect.
messy. Human beings are an absolute shit show.
Yeah, we really are. You know, I was telling somebody over there, like, name a problem. Name a problem on the earth today, anywhere on the planet.
Homelessness.
Name another one. We could name all of them.
Yeah.
We could spend all day long naming every single problem on this planet, and every single one of them, the lowest common denominator is human beings. Yeah. If Mother Earth got tired of our shit, chewed us up, spit us out, like dinosaurs us, Mother Earth would be perfect.
In a while. It'd take a while for it to recover from our bullshit.
Clean up our mess, let us rot away. But yeah, that's just how it is. You know, we have outsmarted nature. You know, but sooner or later, nature might get tired of our mess. I don't know.
I think we've tricked ourselves into thinking we've outsmarted nature.
Maybe. Our technology, like airbags and cars, allow us to
get away with shit that we would naturally be able to. And I think we have
parachutes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Amazing devices. I think we have a problem telling time because it's like, oh, the last 6 months were amazing, so therefore we must be okay. It's like, well, what about 60 months? What about 60 years?
Oh, that is one of America's bad problems is we can't see past our front sight post. You know, that's our planning is, you know, what are we doing this weekend? What you doing this weekend? No one ever asks you, hey, what you planning on doing in July? What's your plans for July, man?
I'd have to pull up my iCal.
Right.
I'm sure I have something amazing. It's
Yeah.
going to be the best plans ever. Nobody can rival them, but I would have to look at it.
Right. Yeah. I don't know what they are, but I have them. They're coming. Yeah. You know, our culture doesn't do that. And it's not surprising that some of our nation's adversaries, could call them enemies in some ways, like China, they've been playing a long game.
They have a different version of time, though.
Right.
I was
Their
talking,
cultures are different.
yeah, like I was telling you, I was talking with Toby, and one of the best Afghan proverbs that I've heard, which explains a lot of, I think, why Afghanistan went the way it did, is, Americans have all the watches, the Afghans have all the time.
Yep. Yeah, I've heard that one too. I think the
It's so
first mention
applicable.
of that the way they looked at it was actually, and this might be right, might be wrong, but someone said that it came out of those books that the Pashtuns wrote, The Other Side of the Mountain. The Russians wrote the book, The Bear Went Over the Mountain, and some Pashtu fighter wrote The Other Side of the Mountain.
Yeah.
And supposedly that's the first time that it was written down.
There could probably be no more accurate metaphor for Afghanistan, for sure.
I mean, we're on third generation fighters now.
Yeah.
Third.
Yeah.
But
Do you think it's recoverable, the political system in the U.S.? I have my concerns.
I don't know, but I'm going to go find out. And when I find out, I'm going to be honest about it.
What do you think about term limits?
I am absolutely for term limits. I am promising right now we'll do 4 total. If North Carolinians want to elect me 4 times for a total of 8 years, that is all I will do, waivable to 1 more, total of 10 years, 1 decade. That will put me at 56 years old, all said and done.
Yeah, I think there's a problem with people being able to spend a lifetime in politics.
Absolutely. That is the one mistake. Well, not the one. I mean, right? Try not to be in absolutes. But the biggest mistake our forefathers made was assuming that generations down the line were going to hold to the same ethics and standards that they had, that none of them wanted to be leaders, right? Like George Washington turned down being king.
Pussy.
King, man, of what was going to become the most powerful nation ever, right? Like let that sink. Like they would have happily gave that guy a crown. They loved him. He was adored. Federalist, state rights. It didn't matter where you were in the political spectrum. You loved George Washington, and he stepped back and said, "Nope, it's not the type of government we need. We just fought that.
Yeah,
we're going to do something better." How many of those folks in the House or the Senate would turn down being king? How many?
Man, that's a good question.
How many presidents or vice presidents in the last, 100 years would turn down being king of this nation? Woo. That's something to ask, right? But our forefathers did not address career politics because that wasn't a thing back then. Even if you look at, and this is huge, right? One of the best educations I've given myself lately is looking at pre-US, right? Before we were the United States. What led to the Constitution? Why did they write it? So when you look at the House of Commons, House of Representatives for the Brits, 2 stark problems we have now, right? Back then, even in Britain, the House of Commons was not a career. You would go there, represent your communities, your all the feudal lands and all that, right? And because that evolved out of the whole dukes and the earls and all that, that was the House of Commons. They were representing the common folk. Well, that's now our House of Representatives. So for one, right, like there's 170, there's more than, I think it's 177, but whatever, there's more than 170 attorneys in our House of Representatives right now. The Senate is for the elite. And that's the way it was designed. Why do we have all these attorneys and doctors in the House, right? That's supposed to be farmers and, manufacturers and laborers and blue collar folks, but somehow it has evolved into what it is today.
Yeah.
Not what they intended.
I don't have a problem with doctors and lawyers, but I think it should be an equal representation. In my pie in the eye, or pie in the sky view, I would like to see it being an equal representation across the board.
Because it's not now. It is very much an elitist thing. And that's not the way it was designed. And you can read about it in the things they wrote. I don't know how them dudes had so much time to write, because I don't have enough time to read what they wrote. And they were writing with freaking feathers and ink.
They had less shit to do at night.
I guess.
There's
under
candlelight. Yeah.
They wrote so much. So, and a lot of people say, well, the Federalist Papers. And this is something I didn't know, because I used to think that, like, man, a lot of those folks really did want a strong federal government, and that the Federal Papers somehow influenced the writing of our Constitution. But come to find out, the Federalist Papers, some bulk of them weren't published until after the Constitution was ratified anyway. I didn't know that. So studying what they thought and what they were thinking, and reading what our forefathers wrote gives us a much better idea of what the Constitution was for in the first place. Interesting thing about our Constitution, right? There, you can go to law school and focus on constitutional law, right? There's not a single, and this is actually a verified fact, there's not a single law school in America today with a constitutional law program that is teaching constitutional history. They only teach cases.
Really?
Yeah. After the Constitution was ratified. That's when constitutional law starts. They only study how the Constitution has been interpreted by the courts over the years. They don't study the history of it. And I was blown away by that. I was like, are you serious? Like, wouldn't you want to know the history of the document? Why did
or the motivation
Jefferson
behind
and
it?
Adams, why did they write the words that they wrote? And like I said, their biggest shortcoming in that awesome document, and I just don't think they had the sight to see the greed and the transformation of America, especially through the Industrial Revolution, where politics became a career. They just didn't anticipate that, and they had no way of anticipating it. There was no history of it. Even the Roman Empire, their senators, it was a part-time job. It was not a full-time job, and it was never intended to be. So we have to. There are things that America has to have before we're going to solve any of our other problems. Term limits is one of them, and I contend that 4 terms for a representative is good, and maybe we have to have a discussion, right? And this is a huge thing for me. It's not about what I want, what I think, right? I was asked to go and speak to a group of folks, and I went, well, I will, but I'd much rather come and listen to what you guys have to say. I want to know what you want. I'm supposed to be a representative. And they looked at me like I was, like I had 2 growing out of my forehead. They had never heard that before. I'm like, what do you mean? I'm supposed to be a representative. I want to know what you guys want. And they were like, well, that's weird. Well, can I just take questions then? And they're like, absolutely. Yeah, that's awesome. So anyway, term limits have got to be a thing. We've got to have a discussion. Is it 4 terms, 8 years for a representative and 2 for a senator? Or maybe it's 12 for each of them, right? 6 and 3, maybe. But it can't be more than 12, man, right? A decade. That's long enough for a part-time job. But Missouri, when they enacted term limits on their state representation, what they experienced was an uptick in pressure and influence from lobbyists.
Because they had limited time to have that influence.
Exactly. So we have to, again, more echelons, right? We can't just jump the Rangers into the airfield without some kind of air support and some follow-on conventional troops, right? Or they're just going to be out there getting hammered. It's got to be more than one answer. So yes, lobby reform. We've got to get the corporations.
Do you think
away.
most people even understand the power of lobbyists or how involved they are?
I still don't completely understand, and I'm trying really hard. I am no doubt I'm that quintessential drinking from a fire hose right now. All I am doing is reading, researching, asking questions. I'm lucky to have some former representatives, a senator, and some current ones who are willing to take all my questions at any time. And yeah, man, it is absolutely amazing. So, yep, right. I also think we need a retirement age. The military has a retirement age. Civilian populace has a retirement age. Why do we have 80-some-year-old folks running this country?
That's one I don't have an answer for either. It's the stress of that job. I mean, let's talk about the office of the president.
Right.
The stress. I mean, I have no idea what the stress of that job is.
No clue.
I'm going to guess that it's higher than a barista
Slightly.
by an order of magnitude.
Right. We've had stressful jobs. We've been in stressful situations. And I
you time
guarantee
out. You time out at some point.
we're nowhere near. I mean, look at what happens to them physically.
Yeah.
Right? Obama is a great example. Young, handsome. 8 years later, the dude's got gray hair, looks old. He was
Well, that's called the
weathered.
aging process.
It is, but at the same time, he's still not very old. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? And it has happened to every president, right? Like Bill Clinton.
Yeah.
You know, young guys turn old in that job, and old guys get really old in that job. So
I wonder why there isn't an age limit for that. It would make sense.
well, I think that maybe our forefathers, they only lived to be 65 years old on average. And so they were mostly 45 to 65-year-old gentlemen. And I guess they just made an assumption that that was just it. We really weren't going to live to be 90 and 100 years old.
I mean, I could see that for sure.
You know, I don't know. And we didn't have the health care back then, right? They would get something and die from it in a matter of weeks or months. Whereas now we have this health care system that can keep us alive for much, much longer. I don't know. I mean, there's so many variables in that equation that I don't have a full grasp of it. I don't know that I ever will, because all I have is reading what they wrote.
Yeah. Do you think it's possible to heal the divide between the Democratic and Republican Party?
Man,
People are fucking entrenched.
yeah. And I think the bad part is it's our youth. Before I linked up with you today, while I was waiting on my Uber at the airport, I made a post about the governor of South Dakota. She just put out basically a state of her union, state of her state address, either today or yesterday. And I read it briefly. And man, she's done a lot of amazing stuff. And she stayed out of the limelight while she's been doing it, you know.
Is she a Democrat or Republican?
Republican.
Okay.
And I said, her name's Kristi Noem, Governor Noem. And she's not 50 yet. She's a mother. I don't think she's 50 yet. She's very young looking. But anyway, I've just been trying to watch her a little bit. And you got DeSantis in Florida, who is very public and very out there and doing a lot of stuff kind of like Trump has, but he's doing things, some amazing stuff. She's been doing a lot of similar stuff in South Dakota. Their economy's doing great. They're an outlier, just like Florida is. Only she's just not gotten as much limelight and recognition. And she'll tell you, I've been focused on my state. It's my job. Not worried about.
You said South Dakota, right?
Right.
Yeah, there's also only 9 people that live there.
Yeah. I think maybe it's 11 right now, but someone's
true.
driving
2
through.
people probably did leave Cali. Updated census. Sorry, South Dakota.
she-
I'm just kidding.
Yeah, she probably does have a different set of problems, right? Or at least magnitude or whatever. But, you know, a state with a longer cold season than Florida, right? Because a lot of people are dismissing Texas and Florida numbers as, well, it's warm.
Which is
It's
true, but
it is true.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
maybe there's other.
We do get sick in the wintertime.
Yeah.
Right? That's just how our immune systems play out. So, you know, I made a post and I said, this is a picture of leadership. And that's all I said on an Instagram post. And the very first comment back was, she had mass mandates just like the rest of them. She's no better. And like what we were talking about, all states did it at the beginning, right?
Correct.
But she has adjusted and flipped and you know, done what leaders have to do to get their jobs done.
Yeah.
And so anyway, I've just become, you know, an admirer of her just because she's kind of been that quiet professional about what she's been getting done. But anyway, here we have a Republican that's ready to turn on a Republican, a conservative that's already ready to turn on a conservative, right? Imagine if I had posted a Democrat and said they were a good leader. Because let's face it, right? I've said numerous times that I admire Hillary Clinton. That woman will do anything on this planet to achieve her goals. I can admire that. Do I agree with anything she's ever done? Her philosophies? Absolutely not. And let me reiterate that for anyone that's listening. I only admire her for the fact that she's willing to get her jobs done, right? Nothing else. But I can look at things like that objectively without bias, right?
Much like respecting an enemy that's trying to take your life, but you can respect the fact that they're willing to fight for it.
But right now, Americans don't have that perspective, that outlook on things that maybe we do. The average American is just ready to fight at all times on Instagram, or social media. I don't know that they're actually ready to fist fight on the sidewalk, much less down a dirt road where no one's there to break it up.
Yeah,
that's not America right now. Not that it should be, right? Like I said, I'm always torn, man. The luxuries of America versus how tough should we be? I don't know. But yeah, to answer your question, I don't know because we're so ready to fight. However, I mentioned my older sister earlier. She was that middle, right? Clearly we were raised the same way. But as she got into biotech, where's biotech? Massachusetts, Boston. So she's been there for probably almost 20 years now, right? Very liberal place. You can't be somewhere and be unaffected by it, right? Big pharma, right? She does research for biotech. So she has kind of gone more left, but she's not crazy left. No more than I'm crazy right.
Yeah, and I feel like though people would attack you for not being right enough or left enough.
Mm-hmm.
And I say that just based off of sitting back in the
Right.
fucking cheap sheets.
Yeah.
Cheap sheets, did you hear that?
Yeah.
The sheets are cheap. I'm talking 300 thread count, not 1,500 people. The cheap seats.
Yeah.
And just kind of see, and try not to engage in it at all and just kind of watching it again. Not an expert opinion, but just, I'm worried. I
So
don't know if it's possible.
the reason why I think there's some hope, and like I said, I'm not an idealistic type person. I'm a pragmatic realist. The reason I think that we can at least flatten this trajectory, right? Like I think right now we're like on a 30-06 type trajectory, right? And I'd like to get us on like some 375 enabler trajectory, like at least stretch this mess out for another couple hundred years, right? Because all cultures have failed, right? If that's one thing that we know about history is that every single civilization that has ruled this world, and we rule this world, has failed, right?
Yeah, give it enough time.
Right? So my goal is, as a realist, to say, okay, can't we address some of these problems, right? So it's not, to me, it's not about far left, far right, even middle. It's about problem solution. If the solution came from the left, let's look at it. If we can cure cancer with a solution that came out of the Democrat Party, then we should do that.
Better wrap your arms around it.
Damn right. So when I talked with my older sister, and when I called her and told her that I was going to run, she's like, And she and I had just gotten in a little bit of a headbutting thing at my father's funeral, or a couple days later after his memorial. We bumped heads about some stuff. And it was about some of the females in military and how, we've had females in special operations for a long time.
Females have been on the front line of military service since the beginning of military service.
Joe Kent, who's running in Washington, right? His wife, KIA in Syria.
Yeah.
Shannon Kent, right? Female operator. Well,
my grandmother got kicked out of the Army for post-traumatic stress because her job, she was a nurse in the fucking amphibious landings
right.
in World War II.
Right.
Lied and got back in. No, she was in the Navy. She was a Navy nurse. Lied and got back in the Army.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
It's nuts.
You can tell me that caring for those people in these remote locations, or how about in the intelligence world? I've said this one many times. Would you be better off sending in, I mean, if we were going to go for the most handsome example of somebody in the military, team guy, of course.
Of course.
So we'll just lay that out there. Right. But would you get better intel if you sent a fucking chiseled team guy in or a hot woman?
Does he have sleeves or no? He probably has sleeves. So,
One sleeve and a trimmed beard, but product in his hair for sure. You know what I mean? But the point is, like, we've recognized that since the beginning of intelligence.
Right.
And
pillow talk.
Yes. I wish maybe that those women had, or those occupations would get more of a recognition that they deserve. But changing the military.
At the same time, it's OPSEC to talk about what we're talking about right now. Right?
But fucking with the standards.
That's different. Well, let's face it, right? Well, and that's what she and I were getting into. I was like, we don't need women to carry rucksacks and kick doors down. There is a line around every SEAL recruiter's freaking office, SF recruiter's office. You can't get a RASP contract right now. I don't care who you are. Ranger Regiment is over 100% strength.
Yeah.
Young American boys still want to be cool guys. And I was like, we don't need women to do that job. We don't need them. We've got plenty of guys, and most of them can't pass our standards. All right, but here's what we really need. That intel role, that surveillance role. And they're being used for that. But the units that use them are hand-picking them.
And they're super quiet about it.
And they are some amazing people to work with.
Which make the door kicker's job possible.
Right. And so, but she had no idea those roles even existed. She had no idea. So we were bumping heads a little bit about that. We got a little bit of a freaking argument and, roles of women in the battle space and this and that. And she basically said something like, but, because my niece is, a lacrosse badass. My niece is a monster athlete at almost 6 foot tall at 16 years old, right? Like she gets in trouble for being too aggressive on the lacrosse field.
I support that.
I think that's awesome.
Yeah, I support that very deeply.
She couldn't pass selection.
Correct.
She's never going to pass one of our selection courses, right? And she's a stud.
And that doesn't mean that the selection course is unfair. It means the demand of the job, which should be what the selection course is driving their standards off of, is going to deselect 99.99% of human beings.
And she had read something or heard something where they said that our selection standards are built around men's capabilities. And I went, no, that is absolutely wrong. You heard that on CNN, you read it on MSNBC, something. I've heard it before, and I know that you didn't get that from us. Our selections are built around mission requirements.
Correct.
I was like, because I don't get to choose the weight of my machine gun, right? 240 Bravos weigh 28 pounds.
I'd have some carbon fiber fucking rubber band shooter. It was 30 ounces tops.
Yeah. We don't get to choose that our radios weigh 20 pounds or 26 pounds or whatever. We don't get to choose that stuff. And it is a requirement for our mission to carry that stuff. So we don't, we were into that. But long story short, we left that conversation, F you and brother and sisters. And we love each other.
It sounds like a family conversation.
Yeah, we'll do it again in a few months. So I call her a few months later and say, hey, I got a little something I want to share with you. And we talked for about an hour. And we talked about all the different things that are important to her, to include abortion. And I think because we hadn't talked politics in so long, right? Because and my little sister, my younger sister she's a little more liberal. My sister's middle ground. Yep. My older sister, so we just stopped talking politics. It just wasn't worth any of our whiles. We don't get to see each other enough. But in this case, we did, and it didn't wind up well. So months later, we're talking. She starts asking me questions, and I start talking to her about problem solution and options, right? Like, why is an inner city youth? Why don't they just go to college? Why don't they just go to school and get better grades, right? They have the same options as a young lady like my niece or my nephew.
Theoretically.
Right, exactly. Theoretically. The reality is when you grow up in the inner city, and I don't care if it's in Wilmington, North Carolina or freaking Compton, those young men and women, they don't see the opportunities the way that my niece and nephew do, right? They don't see that they do have those options. Why? Because where they live, where they go to school, no one ever talks to them about their options. They're basically told from the time they can socialize that America's against them, the cops are against them, and they really can either be a gangbanger or be a gangbanger and sell drugs. Right? Well, the gang comes in and fulfills that societal means and norms, right? A family. It gives them rules. The rules in the inner city, man, right? That justice system is no bullshit.
Yeah.
Right? You cross your lieutenant gang commander, your corner commander, you're going to get up. You're going to get beat up. They have rules. But what they don't see is options. All right? So what if, with school choice, they get those options, right? And instead of school buses, we give them Uber vouchers. Just like my niece and nephew had, they didn't have cars. They do now. But like a lot of them and their friends, they had unlimited Uber.
Really?
Yeah, that's an option. You can buy unlimited Uber. So parents would just buy them unlimited Uber. They have less to worry about, right? Yeah. They don't have to buy a car. They don't have to buy insurance. And these city kids, they can sit on their phones and click, click, tap, tap while riding in an Uber. It works. So why don't we look at that? Less school buses in the inner cities. We need school buses in rural North Carolina, or rural anywhere in America, right?
Yeah.
Because it's not like, parents can always just take their kids to school. But in the cities, let's just get rid of school buses, give them Uber, and then we've solved the transportation problem. And now inner city mama can decide that her son or her daughter gets to go to that suburb high school that's only 20 minutes down the road. And now they have access to the latest and greatest, the best teachers, and so on and so forth. So I'm not of this mindset, right? Like, how many grumpy old white dudes, 10 years older enough, would easily just say, they just need to get jobs, cut welfare off. Just cut it off.
Yeah, you can fuck right off at that. It
won't
ignores
work.
the reality of the real world.
Right. That is an oughtness, not an isness, right? And I always, so oughtness and isness is one of the, I get it from the Reverend Martin Luther King's A Lesser Known Speech. He talks about oughtness and isness. And it actually comes from the Bible. But oughtness is what you think things should be, right? An idealistic approach. When isness, the way things is.
Yeah.
Right? And it's an amazing approach to looking at things, right? You have to address the way things is, the way things are right now before you can ever hope to get it to be to the way they should be, right? So we have to give options. Here's a hot one, right, that everybody's fussing about all the time. Abortion. Just make abortion illegal. Just make abortion illegal, and as if that's going to make all abortions go away. So here's the catch, and this is why I like to throw this in some Republican faces, conservative faces. If you make guns illegal, people can still get guns, right?
Happens every day.
If you make abortions illegal, people can still get abortions.
Yeah, and you're robbing people the opportunity to make an informed decision again.
Again, informed decisions. So here's my contention. If me and Melissa, two pretty squared away people, right, who make decent money, have a nice, decent home with some dogs, if we tried to adopt a child, it could take 3 to 5 years. But if me and you get married, we can go adopt a kid in 6 to 8 months. Like, the
Always?
standards make no sense, right?
Is that always the case, though?
No, and I'm just throwing numbers out there, right? Like, please don't quote me on these numbers, right? This is a conversation, not like a reading of statistics. But it's a reality that gay couples can adopt sooner right now in the American system than heterosexual couples that are unmarried.
By doctrine?
Just by the way the system works.
Huh.
Yeah, and it's just an interesting conundrum. It's not what's causing abortions. I'm not saying that.
Yeah.
Right? But one of the largest numbers, not largest percentage, largest numbers of abortions today, the demographic is 17 to 22-year-old upper middle class white girls. Now, percentage-wise, it's Hispanic and black women, right? So it's going to how you want to play those numbers. But just sheer number. So now when you put it in that context, now your conservative folks want to start listening. Ooh, wait a minute, my daughter? So first of all, why are people having abortions? Why would a woman do something that in her heart and soul, she already knows is going to cause her trauma? Right?
I can't even begin to answer that because I'm not anybody who'd ever have to make that choice.
We will never understand what it would be like to have to make that decision. We can't, right?
Yeah.
Now, some crazy leftists would argue that you and I could actually have kids, but I'm still certain we can't.
That we could have kids?
That we could be pregnant even, right? That's
like biologically you and I could carry a child?
There are some people that say that these
No,
days.
there's not.
Yes. Yeah. Since I've gotten involved in politics, I've looked at some of these crazy left and crazy right channels. And yes, some of these young college kids that are all for all the different transgenders and all that kind of stuff, they will tell you that men can have babies. And I'm like, no, I'm pretty sure that doesn't work like that. We're not. Nope.
A biological male?
Yeah. I mean, but people are saying crazy shit, right? The average intelligent American, even the person with just slightly below average intelligence still knows that there are two genders, right? But the reality is, right, our our adoption programs in America are broken and they're full of friction and red tape. They take forever. So again, let's go back to the word options, just like with the inner city folks, right? We need to give women options. We can't just say, poof, abortion's illegal because my Christian faith says it's bad. And I am a Christian, and I do believe it's bad, right? Abortion can't be a good thing on any level, right? And even the people who are pro-choice, most of them will even say, yeah, it's not a good thing, but we want people to have the choice. We want a woman and woman's body, right? And I can't say I disagree with that, right? Man, I go back and forth. And Lord knows a lot of Republican strategists would freaking, fire me up and be like, don't ever say that. But I'm for freedom and I'm for less government intervention. And again, let's go back to regulation. If we regulate and say abortion is illegal without incentivizing keeping the child, well, we're doing a disservice because the government is supposed to incentivize good behaviors. So if you have a 19-year-old girl, upper middle class white girl, right? She drives, I'm going to try and paint a picture for folks listening. She drives a 3 Series BMW that her daddy bought her, right? For her college, her high school graduation so she could go to college.
What color is it?
It's white and it has those little initial sticker. It has her initial in pink in the back glass. You know what I'm talking about.
What color is the interior?
You know what?
Beige?
She's too young for me to even take a second glance and know. Right?
Okay, fair.
But she's a good girl. She has a future. And her father has told her that she needs to go to college and maybe law school, right? And society has told her that she doesn't need no man, and that society has told her that she needs to go become the feminist movement. When I say society, let's be serious, right? The feminist movement has told this young lady that she needs to do certain things, and being a mother is not one of them. Okay. So is the issue abortion, or is there what's causing abortion? So we have to deal with root causes, because like I said, there's not a single person, every single pro-life Republican, if you ask them, hey, will banning abortions make them all go away? They have to say no, because when abortions were illegal in America, they were done in alleyways and backs of doctors' offices. Because the reality is, man, the black market will always exist. Cocaine's illegal. Heroin's illegal. We can still get those.
Yeah.
So my contention here is we have to have that adult conversation with the middle. We need to turn off the crazy left and the crazy right. Let's just turn them off, man. Right?
I think you almost have to define it first.
We like labels.
Well, I think it's easier. I mean, there's a lot of words that I think are being thrown around by a lot of people absent definition. And when a word loses its meaning and it can be applied almost ubiquitously, I don't know where we go from there.
Right. Well, Lord knows we've all played words, right? Semantics and play of words, and it's worse than ever. But, just to reiterate, so no one takes a soundbite, we have to present options when it comes to problems, right? We have to address root causes. And I just don't feel like there's any, because we were talking about the left and the right.
Yeah.
When it comes to abortion, Republicans are not dealing with it or providing viable solutions to this problem. No more than, the left is coming up with viable solutions to us being overtaxed. What is the answer? Well, before you can come to an answer, right, you can't just throw solutions at the wall, hope something sticks. You got to look at the root causes. What's the root cause? And let's start addressing it there. And that's going to take some mature conversations. And I think watching the way our representatives and senators react and interact with each other,
It's embarrassing.
it's horrible. I got absolutely fired up the other day. Last weekend, Representative Green, Marjorie Taylor Greene, and Representative Crenshaw were going back and forth at each other over social media.
I call Dan the one-eyed pirate hooker. But I know Dan, so I get to call that.
Did you work with him?
Yeah, I put him through buds.
No shit.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. And a lot of people, man, they're starting to label Dan more and more a rhino.
What does a rhino mean?
Rhino is Republican in name only.
Okay.
In other words,
What the fuck does that mean?
it means they're really just Democratic punks.
Oh, so they think he's
they
like
roll
a
over.
Manchurian candidate for the Democratic Party?
Maybe not that bad, but he has compromised on a lot of issues, right? He's compromised on votes. He's accepted compromises.
Isn't
as
that part of the
wins.
job? Working with the other side when necessary?
Yeah, and I try to be very, unbiased, and I try to look at what he's doing or what Green's doing or what any of them are doing and their constituents and where they're
Is
coming
Green
from.
a Republican as well?
She is.
Okay.
And she's the one out of Georgia who's been, the left and even the moderate right, the rhinos, they've labored her like the crazy one because she's said some pretty wazoo stuff, but she is very conservative. And the reality is, right, like the right has given up a lot of things to the left. The left's gotten almost everything they've wanted in the last 80 years. They've done it in some weird ways, a lot of legislation from SCOTUS. But also, when they present things, a lot of times the Republicans, because they're practical and reasonable, they will compromise because they think that's part of the job. The overwhelming amount of conservatives today, though, now see that as we have to stop that. We've already given up too much of our freedoms.
So it has to become a hard line.
Now it has to be a harder line, for sure. And on many issues, I agree with that, right? Like the Second Amendment shall not be infringed. That's pretty cut and dry. And we have given up.
Does it have any limitations to you? How about a bazooka?
So I will always go back to this. Do what you want. Enjoy doing it. Don't hurt anybody else.
Should I be able to have a javelin missile?
Well, I'm going to have to ask you about, do you have tanks we can shoot at with it?
I used to shoot them at people. So
Are we supposed to do that?
Kandahar sent me all of them after I started doing it.
People on dirt bikes, right?
No, not always.
No.
I trust me.
So,
you'd have a hard time finding somebody who supports the Second Amendment more.
Right.
But at the same time,
Right. So here, I'll give you my take, right? So, and a well-regulated militia. And a lot of the young gun guys are like, okay, I want to have explosive and M203 grenade launchers because the military has it. And I'm like, okay, wait a second. In the military, we have very precise, exact measures and training for handling explosives.
and controls.
Right. And our explosives are very, very easy. I mean, it takes so much to set them off, right? It's not like civilian explosives that, hey, man, you freaking little static electricity or whatever. It's not that bad anymore. But, our stuff is so stable. Even still, our controls and our measures are, through the roof, right? Just the way we transport it and all. And then the training to employ it. It is so crawl, walk, run. So poof, overnight, if we made everything legal, there are some Americans out there that probably shouldn't have explosives or bazookas or javelins, right? Or Apache gunships.
Yeah.
And those people will say, well, I should be able to have anything. Well, because our founding fathers had cannons and, well, they also had well-regulated militias. They had their own little platoons, their own little, their communities, and they went to training. So I go back and forth on that, right? I'm like, hey, man, if you can afford an Apache and some 2.75-inch rockets, and you can fly that Apache and not hurt other people when you shoot your rockets over on your ranch, okay. I can't say.
What about when they accidentally crash into a school?
Well, and then they accidentally crash into school. So at that point, we have laws for negligence and criminal negligence. And now you go to jail for fucking ever.
You probably would die in that crash, but
Maybe, right. But, it's just like if I crash my truck into a school bus while I'm texting, I should go to jail, right? There are laws that would put me in jail for manslaughter for that and criminal negligence.
I guess the difference between those is, cars are a privilege, and we're talking Second Amendment. We're talking about rights,
right? And so it is. It's weird for me. The other thing folks ask about, what about felons? I say this: if you are a felon and you go to prison, and then the prison system says you're rehabilitated and ready to walk the streets again, you should be able to have a gun. Because the Constitution doesn't say a thing about felons.
What if you encourage your felony with the use of a firearm?
Right? Okay, so you assault someone with a gun. Right? Hell, you shoot them and wound them. Well, you should go to jail forever. Right? You tried to kill them. But see, that's not a failure of people or our Constitution. That's a failure of the justice system. DAs pleading everything out, constantly juking the stats. Again, there's some more accountability there, right? So if we just keep making more and more laws, because we have plenty of laws, right? Everything you've brought up there's a law to cover it with a serious consequence. But if the DAs and the prosecutors aren't putting people in jail when they screw up things, then, because again, it's just like the mask mandates. If people have freedom of choice, a lot of times with informed decisions, right, they'll mostly behave themselves. Because let's face it, man, there are so many people out there with guns. And yet there are so very few, statistically, percentage-wise, accidents with them. They happen. Of course they happen. But, finger and muzzle, they're redundant. Just do one of them, and if you do mess up the other one, no one gets hurt. And by no means I'm saying that right, you can run around with your finger on the trigger with a hot weapon. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying that in reality is that safety brief they are redundant. A lot of people don't think about it like that. So yeah, it's hard, man, when it comes to Second Amendment. So here's my answer. If Americans want to make it where a felon who used a firearm in a crime not be able to have that right, then we need to amend the Constitution. And there is a legal procedure for amending the Constitution.
Not the first 10 amendments, though. That's the Bill of Rights.
Right. But but you can amend them.
I don't think you can amend the first 10.
Well, we can change them with more amendments because we have.
Supersede them, essentially, you mean?
Yeah. So you can amend the Constitution, and while you may not be able to, because that's the funny thing about the Bill of Rights, when you read it, after the Bill of Rights, all of the amendments say, and the Congress will have such authorities. The Bill of Rights don't have any of that. It's interesting. It's just something that's interesting.
Yeah.
That the Congress will have the authority to. Well,
the Second Amendment one is a tough one, man.
It is.
Let's fast forward into the future. 50 years from now, there's the U.S. military develops a shoulder-fired rifle platform that has nuclear-tipped rounds. Should American citizens be able to own this? Obviously, it wouldn't be like a 10 kiloton, but we're talking like a very small, localized implementation. It could drop a structure with one 5.56 round.
Well, you know what? We don't even have to fast forward. We could just use modern-day suitcase, tactical, artillery-fired nukes. We have them.
Yeah.
Right? So why can't regular people have them? Because we are also reasonable human beings, right? So
shall not be infringed.
Again, there is a magnitude to mistakes, right? And negligence. Right? Let's stay in negligence, right? Because mistakes, that's different. Negligence, drinking and driving. The chances of you killing hundreds of people while drinking and driving, pretty nil. The chances of you killing hundreds of people if you accidentally set off your suitcase nuke, your tac nuke, near a school or a shopping mall, very high. So I think now we start talking social means standards and norms, right? And I don't think Americans, like the average American's like, nuclear weapons, Apache gunships, F-22s, JDAMs. Yeah, that is more of probably a military thing. But also the reality is, right, there are some very wealthy people who own jets and space shuttles and stuff. If they wanted Javelin missiles, they could probably get them.
They better not, those fuckers. I would go steal them from them.
Right? Yeah, it's hard. I look at it like this, right?
I don't have the answer either. I'm playing largely devil's advocate.
No, and you should. You absolutely should. And I appreciate it, right? Because typically speaking, I sit in a room with gun guys and we all kind of agree about stuff. But the hard questions is when we start getting into those fringes. The NFA, right? Fully automatic stuff, short barrel rifles, suppressors.
Here's the issue with those.
Yeah.
You and I both know that people make a huge deal out of full auto.
Right.
How many times was your fucking M4 on full auto overseas?
Like 3 times ever.
Accidentally, probably for 2.
Counter ambush.
That's what I'm saying.
Shit.
Yeah. Overwhelming fire superiority, maneuver back on single fire. Why?
Yep. Precise engagement.
You can't fucking hit anything on full auto.
Right.
So to me, the full auto argument, and to people and SBRs, a short barrel rifle doesn't make a rifle any more dangerous. Actually, at distance, it makes it fucking less dangerous.
Agreed. But
and a suppressor.
The flip side to all of those things is none of those things making them illegal, and they're not illegal.
Yeah, there's just a process.
There is a process and a tax.
Yep.
So that to me is the effed up part. Because of the tax And because of a lot of old collectors, they keep that stuff priced so high that it's a collector's item. So like an M60, I know someone who just bought one. It was like $54,000 for an old machine gun that probably is just going to jam a lot.
But when it fires, it's like
right?
it's like a rock and roll
But
guitar.
it's like a full size one, not like the cool ones y'all had.
It still has the most amazing cyclic rate of fire. It is goddamn symphony.
But so the NFA can go away. I don't think, I know, right? We're not going to see an influx of, oh my God, all of a sudden the average American, they decided they can own a fully automatic FNFAL, and now all of a sudden they're going to go be a criminal with it? No, that's just not going to happen. The reality is there are already fully automatic weapons on the streets, right? Making them illegal don't keep them out of the criminals' hands. And we all know that, right? Like, and even the left is starting to come to that conclusion. And many of them anyway. And so when it comes to suppressors, right? Like a lot of people want to tout Australia and the UK's gun laws. And I'm like, you can buy a suppressor like over the counter there, right? No questions asked. There's no paperwork, no nothing. Yeah. Here's the cash. Give me that suppressor. And so suppressors need to happen, right? Like I'm completely deaf in my right ear. Now, IED, but also I can hardly hear out of my left ear because IEDs and shooting, right?
Yeah.
Because of our short-barreled rifles in shoe houses. More PSI than most of our door charges.
Accurate.
Right? Well, that's a new USASOC thing, right? If you're doing CQB, you're running a suppressor. And that's a good thing.
It is the gentlemanly way to shoot a rifle.
It really is.
Yeah.
So suppressors have got to happen. Short barrel rifles, like you said, they don't increase our lethality. Any of us who've ever handled a weapon, we can do CQB with a 16-inch gun.
Yeah.
Because you handle your weapon, right? You run your gun. The gun doesn't run you.
And they're actually worse for precision shooting at distance.
Way less.
Yeah.
Way less, right? But again, it's our right. If you can own a pistol and you can call a rifle right? The laws don't make sense. So let's just get rid of them and let Americans make informed decisions, right? So my contention is I don't ever see, because I'm a realist, I am for repealing and getting rid of the NFA. I don't see it happening that way. What I see happening is short barrel rifles and suppressors, then short barrel rifles, if we can chip away at that. Because let's face it, right? Let's say, poof, tomorrow we make suppressors legal and you can buy them at Walmart. And all of a sudden, all the dudes with illegal firearms go and screw them on their AKs and their Uzis or MAC-10s or whatever. I don't know. We grew up on Miami Vice, right? I don't think MAC-10s are cool anymore.
They're cool to look at.
Right.
Suck to shoot.
MP5s or whatever.
Now
man.
we're talking.
Yeah.
SDs.
Yeah.
No big deal.
Now all of a sudden, suppressors are being used in crimes by people that were going to do the crimes with the suppressors or without. And now they're in the news. And now the left has ammunition to fight against those suppressors again. So I think it has to be a tiered approach. And suppressors to me they're the most practical one to go after because they're good for us. They're a good thing for shooters because they protect our hearing. I don't know. There's that act, Hearing Protection Act, that keeps somebody. It's like in bursts, and every now and then somebody will blow some oxygen to it and get it burning a little bit, and then it just dies. Well, because Trump said that was one of the things he was going to get passed. People are like, yeah, and then he banned bump stocks. Like what? I've never even touched a bump stock. Never even seen one before.
I've never actually seen one in real life either.
No. Like, to me, that's just another one of those stupid gimmicky things that...
It was a mechanism to try to circumvent the full auto sear on a rifle.
Silly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know, man. I mean, again, it's going to go back to this, right? And I keep telling people this, that there are three things on any issue you talk to me about or ask me about. I'm going to look at the 10 Commandments, the Constitution, and my constituents. I want to know what America wants. And let's face it, we're not going to agree on it.
Yeah.
But just like a suppressor, if you ask my sisters what a suppressor is, it's a weapon of war. It'll make it where you can kill everyone and no one will ever hear it because they don't know any better.
I wish that's what it was.
Right?
That would be amazing.
It's not real. It's not a real thing. That's Hollywood and a misunderstanding. So back to what you said, informed decisions. So what is the root of our problem? Almost all of our problems, aside from human beings, education. I used to go to school with a shotgun in my truck straight from duck hunting, or a rifle straight from deer hunting. And we had hunter safety class and archery in school. And I'm not saying that we need to jump to like putting a locker full of firearms, like Ruger 10/22s at every middle school. It's not what I'm saying.
Yeah.
But some education on the safety of handling of guns and stuff in schools, not a bad thing. But again, not ramming it down schools or municipalities or county school boards. Incentivize, don't regulate. If a county, why don't we make funding available for hunter safety, firearm safety, and a skeet shooting team or an archery team? Because let's face it, if you can learn to shoot a bow, fundamentals definitely carry over.
Oh, for sure.
So why not have that funding available? And if a school chooses, if a board, the school board in that county chooses to take that funding and use it for that program, well, now it's an incentive, not a regulation, right? Like, let's put the power back in parents' hands. Now, give them school choice. We set up programs that have funding available, because up until now, federal funding is used as a weapon. Federal funding for a state to get it, or a department, like a police department, to get a grant, it always comes with regulations and stipulations. So federal funding is just like transportation dollars. If a state does X, Y, or Z, well, we can just pull their transportation dollars. They're going to lose infrastructure. So the federal government, man, you want to talk about too big for its britches. That type of horse shit needs to go away. Incentives, not regulations. And I think that's how we bring America back together. That's how we come back to being one nation under God. We're never going to agree fully, but when our grandparents grew up, there was the left and the right, Republicans and Democrats, and they all still cared about America. And they were willing to do reasonable compromises. And then, let's face it, the liberals kind of took it too far. And, I hear a lot of young conservatives saying that the system's broken. And I'm like, absolutely not. It just hasn't worked for you. The system has worked really well for Democrats who have been very active and getting up and getting after it. They protest, they lobby. I mean, they've done it all right. And some people would say they took advantage of the system. Okay, maybe. And some of the things they do is questionable as far as moral and ethics, right? They're going to accomplish their goals no matter how many people have to die.
I'd say both sides of the aisle do that.
Absolutely. It's just so hard to see it both ways. So, yeah, man, we just need to return the federal government to that constitutional limitations. And it's nothing that's going to happen overnight. It's not what's going to happen this July. It's what's going to happen 30 years from now. Because, hell, our debt, you're talking about a long-term plan right now. If we took every cent gained in tax dollars, and I want to cut some of that back, it would take 30 years to pay off our debt. And that's not funding anything else.
Yeah, that's just paying debt.
Oh, my God. So we have to look at probably canceling some debt, right? Who are we going to piss off? But we're also going to have to look at, a 150-year plan for paying that debt back. What? Wait, what?
Yeah.
None of us are going to live that long. So trying to talk career politicians into doing something that's going to benefit 6 generations down the road, good luck. So that's why I say I'm a realist. I don't know what I can do. But if that group of veterans that I'm talking about, and our friends, because it's not, in our group, it's not just veterans, that if we can get elected, you're talking about a caucus. When you've got 20 or 30 people all banded together up there on Capitol Hill, you're talking about something that has to be a group of people that have to be asked for permission. And that's what America needs right now. When I talk about leadership, I don't mean Americans need leadership. They need representation, but Capitol Hill needs leadership. Just like with Marjorie and Dan were fussing, right? Like they both needed to be bent over the proverbial knee and given a spanking. Like, hey, you're sitting U.S. House of Representatives. behave as such. Stop disrespecting the office and the American people. Act your age.
Yeah.
So anyway, man, I don't have all the answers. I have no problems telling people I don't know, but I know how to solve problems.
How do we restore people's faith in the election process? That's my big concern for our country in the near term. I don't know if we can survive 2024 going the way that 2020 did, with a large portion of people legitimately believing that the results were invalid.
The vice chair of North Carolina's GOP told me last week, not just me, a group of folks, that they need 15,000 volunteers to poll watch for the primary elections in May. This ain't even the daggone general elections. Just North Carolina needs, they need 15,000 people to volunteer to just go help at the polls and watch the polls and help provide some of that security and integrity. 15,000. Where are you going to get 15,000 conservative Republicans to go volunteer for anything?
It shouldn't be a mix of both.
Well, she was saying that's what they need to overwatch and make sure the Democrats don't pull anything funky. So,
has there actually been any proof that funky things were pulled?
Yeah, Georgia, Arizona, they all have the proofs. Was it as widespread as some people said? I don't know. I am purposely.
Would it have reversed the results of the election?
I don't know.
I mean, Trump was on NPR.
I don't know
2
how
days ago.
anyone can say for sure one way or the other. I don't know.
I think if there was a smoking gun, and again, I say this not living in that world at all, but I feel like if there was a smoking gun, it would be presented.
Yeah, unless you subscribe to the idea that the FBI and the DOJ and every other government organization is against conservatives. I don't necessarily subscribe to that because I'm just not willing to go full conspiracy theorist yet.
Yeah.
Hence why I'm running, right? Like, if I didn't have some faith less in Americans, and I don't mean just America, Americans. I have faith in moderates on both sides. If I didn't have faith, some type of hope, I wouldn't be running, man. I'd be moving out here and chilling.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, your decision to run is one that, I mean, honestly, I can't think of one I would like to make less than that. I also don't think I would be a good, I would not be good for that job.
Yeah,
I realize
I won't
my
be
strengths
either.
and limitations.
I won't be either. I'm going to be horrible at this job, but I think that's why people are interested in voting for me, because I'm not. You know, one of my opponents was a county commissioner and ran for state rep, and he's just like, his whole last 20 years, he's just been running for things. He wants to be a politician really badly, and I'm over here going, no, I don't want this at all, and I promise you. I've even told people, like, if I do one term and determine there is no hope, then I may just walk away after one term.
Yeah.
Right now, I'm not a quitter, right, by any shape. So I doubt that's a scenario that would play out. But let's say after 2 terms, I'm in my 3.5-year mark, and I've tried, and it's fallen on deaf ears, and there's no cooperation, and I'm just getting pushed back from the establishment, then I will tell the American people that. And if it means I only do 2 terms, then I only do 2 terms, right? If I truly don't, I just don't think we can make improvements, then I will tell us that. I don't know. It's going to take some serious players on both sides. Folks who don't want to make it a career, folks who aren't corruptible. And I don't know. I'm worried about that. Like, you know, I have a core group of my very close friends, you know, some SF dudes, a couple of SEALs, a couple of soft guys, and then just my redneck buddies. And I got them all together and I was like, hey, fellas, I'm looking at y'all. When the time comes and I'm slipping and I have been infected with the cancer that is politics and I've become a politician, hey, man, deliver my wall-to-wall counseling. Bring me back to reality. And a couple of them were like way too enthusiastic. You know, they were like, oh, hell yeah, bro. Yeah, we'll back you right up in the corner and whoop your ass. And I'm like,
They're going to tell you that on like
easy.
the second day just to fuck with you.
Yeah. I'm like, hey, guys, I wasn't volunteering for an ass whooping. I just need some backstops. I have seen good people go into politics and become politicians. So there's got to be something to it. There's got to be something to that whole idea that it is an infectious disease that somehow corrupts. And I'm pretty certain that I can stay away from that just by just remembering what my real goals are, and that is to move somewhere where I can breathe thin, non-humid air. You know,
if you were king of the Republican Party, who? Oh, that's bad. If you were, no, fuck it. If you were king of the Republican Party for a day,
one day,
who would you run for president in 2024? Who would you put up as the Republican presidential nominee?
You know any E5s on the teams?
Plenty.
Pick one.
I'd say like E6 before
we're going to do
E6. We start being considered.
Okay.
Can you think of anybody in the party that you would?
Christie, no.
Okay.
And probably DeSantis. They have exhibited true leadership through this whole mess, and that they care about their jobs and their states, and they didn't just back down. I would favor Christie because she's a female. And I think we're ready for a female president, right? Lord knows, right? The left would have put any female they could get in there if they thought they could get the votes, right? Of course. They chose another old white dude, right? Like, they don't make any sense to me sometimes. But
well,
it
the
would
Republicans was an old white dude as well.
Oh, well, at least they are honest about it. Like, we like old white dudes.
Yeah.
The Democrats have always been like, enough with these old white dudes. And then they pick like the oldest white dude.
So let's flip the coin on this one. Now you're head of the king of the Democratic Party for a day. Who would you run if you were the Democrats?
Now, am I picking someone that I think my Republican pick could win? Could be?
No, just the best. Who would you say would be their best representative? Because I would hope at the end of the day, that's what the process is supposed to do, right? Deliver us the two best choices.
Well, I would have to say I'm still too ignorant on the Democrats. I'm still trying to learn the Republicans and everything that's at play there. So that's an excellent. Now, Manchin, from Senator from West Virginia, who just bucked all the Democrats. He's shown on how many votes now that he's not just going to vote for whatever the Democrats
he's
tell
definitely
him
not party
to.
line centric.
So I think he's exhibiting a trait that we should look for.
Would you look for that same trait in a Republican
Absolutely.
candidate?
Yeah, because the rhinos, yeah, man.
I didn't know that term, but I'm going to use that shit all the time. But I'm going to mean rhinoceros.
Yeah, Republican in name only.
Fuck.
Yeah. I didn't know what it meant either until I got involved in this mess. And I was like, embarrassingly, I had to be like, hey.
I'm going to text Dan right after this, be like, you're such a rhino.
Don't tell him I called him that.
No, I'm going to go borrow somebody's phone who doesn't have their number.
Because I've seen things that Dan has said and done that I'm like, I wouldn't go that route. But then again, he is loved in his district. I know some folks in the next door district, oil gas guys, who are like, they love him over there, right? They love him in his district. He's well funded and all that. I think he is going to be challenged this time. I don't know that the fellow that's challenging him stands a chance in hell. So I always ask myself this: is Dan representing his constituents? And if he is, he's doing his job. I don't know. I don't understand his district that well. I'm still trying to. I'm still doing an area study of my district. I don't have time to mess with his district. So if Dan is doing his right by his constituents, he's doing his job. So if a very conservative 24-year-old from South Carolina doesn't like what Dan's doing, oh well.
Yeah, pack rocks.
Because you didn't vote for him and you can't vote for him. Now, let's say you contributed $2,900 to Dan's campaign and you live in that district. Well, now you have a dog in his fight.
Yeah.
So there have been some stuff that Dan has said and done that I'm like, that's a little too compromising to me. I think Dan needs some backup, right? I feel like Dan is like that lone operator out there on the side of the mountain, freaking trying to call for fire, defend himself, plus mount an assault all at the same time, right? So I think if Dan has backup from a bunch of good folks coming here, Dan will just become what he's supposed to be. And I think same with who he was fussing with on the opposite end of the Republican spectrum, right? Dan's a little moderate. Marjorie's very right. I think if you can get some leadership on Capitol Hill to like, all right, come here, you grab everybody, you know what I mean? Like a team sergeant.
Yep.
That's what Capitol Hill needs. When I say leadership for America, I don't mean for Americans. I mean like someone who will go up there and be like, sit down, oh, y'all want to fight? Okay, cool. We'll go outside. Yeah.
I don't think they have those let's go outside conversations.
No, they don't. They don't have wall-to-wall counselings. They don't have that let's go sort it out behind the building type stuff. Now, and I'm not saying they need that, but they do need someone to step in because let's face it, the heads, you know, they're just old players and they need to go. I've told people that, hey, if someone's been in longer than 2 terms and you reelect them, you're part of the problem.
If they've been in politics for longer than they've been out of it, it's part of the problem right there.
Right.
Where can people find and support you? We've been at this for over 3 hours.
Have we really?
Oh, yeah.
Damn. Yeah. Hell, I've talked to you more today than I've talked to my girlfriend in the last 3 months.
That's a personal issue that you guys need to work out together.
She has no interest in listening to me gab. And she rarely asks me questions because she doesn't really care about my opinion. No, she will tell me the chores that I need to get done by tomorrow.
That's fair.
Yeah,
that's fine.
So of course I'm on all the socials and it's Tony Cowden, Tony_Cowden_4NC on the Instagrams, and I just joined Getter today.
I joined it and then I got an email from them that said, welcome Patriots. And to be honest with you, anybody that opens with that, I'm going to back off.
That's that politicizing of everything, right? All these catchphrases.
It's a mistake. I believe it's a tactical, it's a strategic error on their part.
Yeah, and I see it in a lot of campaigns.
Yeah.
Right? Like right now, the buzzwords are, and catchphrases are patriot, fighter, conservative. In the little meeting I went to, not little meeting, very important meeting, the GOP in Johnston County. Candidates after candidates stood up, introduced themselves as, you won't find another person that's more conservative than I am. And I'm like, that's 8 people who just said that. Statistically speaking, at least 7 of you have to be wrong.
And you have to now fight to determine who is the most conservative.
Well, and that's the other thing. I'm a fighter. And I'm over here going, I have a question. What have you ever fought?
Yeah.
Tying your shoes when you were drunk?
Well, hold on. That's fucking hard.
It is hard. I'm not saying it's
Do
not.
you know how you beat that?
Velcro.
Flip-flops.
Oh, flip-flops. I was thinking Velcro shoes. My uncle wears Velcro shoes, and I love them. But yes, flip-flops for sure.
Yeah.
No, and that's so frustrating to me because these catchphrases, they only serve to continue to divide us.
Correct.
Right? I'm a patriot. Well, you know what? I know some Democrats who love America.
Yeah.
I've worked with some pretty liberal dudes who went to combat for America and are all deals, right?
Yeah.
I'm sure you have done as well. But we need to get away from these labels and catchphrases that further divide. Yes, I'm a patriot. I mean, I don't think of myself like that, right? Like I want America to be better so all Americans are better. You know?
Agreed.
So I don't know, man. That stuff is frustrating. I haven't gotten that email, but then again, I also haven't checked my email since I created my new account.
There you go.
But,
so where else can people find you?
Yeah, so the website, probably the most important landing page right now. And God, I've been at this for 3 weeks and I still can't say my website's name without kind of just shaking my head. It is www.TonyCowden.com. It is TonyCowden.com, and that's my campaign page. And it's funny because, right, like quiet professional. Now I have a website with my name in it.
Yeah, but it's not all pictures of what you used to do.
Right,
You know,
right.
Both
At
can
all.
exist at the same time.
Yeah, and that was the thing, right? Name recognition. That's the name of this game.
Yep.
Right? Name recognition followed by how are you going to vote? And that's all people care about. So I have to trust my team, right? I always tell people this. The only reason I'm still alive today is because I trusted my team, And so I'm doing it now. And my team leader, my consultant said, hey, name recognition, right? Name recognition. You need it. And people are tired of, Tony for House, Cowden for Congress. Like, just your name.
Yeah.
And when I thought about it like that, I was like, oh, that actually plays more into my stance. It's just weird for me to be all not so quiet anymore. But it's a different mission.
Yeah, sometimes that's what's required.
That's right. Got to adjust, flex. It's a different target, different mission. The days of blending in or trying to.
Yeah.
They're over.
I wish you luck, man. I can't thank you enough for taking the time to come out here. Awesome conversation.
No. Yeah, when you invited me, I was like, hell yeah.
Sweet. Well,
Yeah.
on that note, let's let people enjoy their day.
All right. Thanks, man.